Hello, hello. If you can hear us, if you could see us, please do let us know. We would really appreciate it because, as I always say, despite the fact that this is supposed to work flawlessly, I don't trust these things.
It's fair. Every single episode we open the same way, and almost every single episode it has been fine. But we have had one where it wasn't, so it is always best, always wise to double check. Oh, my camera's playing up over here. Let me just sort my camera while we're waiting to check everything's
at
working.
least it doesn't try and turn you into a green skin every day.
No, that's fair.
We're still looking into the secret behind that, but the source has yet to be discovered. Investigations are ongoing.
It's going to be a fun day today. We are diving into one of my favorite locations in the Warhammer world because it's one that I have used significantly and multiple times in my own games. So I've got a pretty strong idea of what it feels like, how it should be, because I've kind of visited it in my head, at least. And it's
elaborate.
It's pretty horrible. Hellpit is not a fun place, as you're going to be finding out. This is going to be, for me at least, a super fun episode.
Yeah, I'm pretty heavily looking forward to this. It's been a little while since we've dropped by Skavendom. We've been really busy in kind of like the chaos sphere for a while, so it's kind of nice to get to their oh so wonderful chaotic little c cousins of the furry variety. So this should be a really good time. But hopefully everyone is doing okay out there, because I'm looking forward to talking about. There's a lot of horrors awaiting us where we're going, which is great. Always a lovely way to start off the day.
This place is it might even be worth the smallest of trigger warnings, although probably not. But just to warn you that some of the stuff in this one is pretty proper horrific. Pretty horrific. This is not going to be a fun one. This is, it is for me. This is going to be one full of not just body horror, but what actually allows body horror to come about, which means, yes, this is the home of Clan Moulder, where they breed. And when I say they breed, they will breed anything with anything. So it's not a fun place.
So, in usual fashion, we're going to knock out like super chat stuff that come in before we really get into it. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
Let me just double check about. I changed all my sound settings because I was hosting an awards ceremony. So let me just do that.
Yeah, how was that?
See. That was really good fun. That was over at World Anvil. That's that big website where you can build entire worlds. It's a super place. And it was their community awards for the World Anvil community, where they all got to celebrate the best examples of everything that they had, and it was absolutely awesome. Loads of fun there.
Great. I'm very glad to hear that.
Okay, all right. Hopefully the feedback is gone.
So with our first one, Magladraw, just want to say that I really enjoyed the 40k versus fantasy stream. You guys were very fun to watch. It was overall good storytelling. Oh, well, thank you. I'm quite pleased to hear that.
I've got a couple of things to say about that one, actually, because it was something that we did purely for fun. It was just an April Fool's Day bit of silliness, but the comments that we've had back in it have been enormously supportive. Actually, we were expecting it to be a little bit of a shit flinging contest. Let's be honest, just a little bit. But as it turns out, no, it wasn't. It was a really cool piece of storytelling, and you all appear to love it. So whilst we have absolutely no intention of making this a thing, we will definitely at some point go back to it, because we have had so many people asking us to do it. So at some point, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty likely. The feedback has been not only positive, but let's say appreciatively large.
More. Yeah. I was a little surprised. It was. I purposely don't look at my messages because I get so many of the silly things coming in on Discord. But I just had this sudden pile up, and I was like, crap, I'll go check it. And people were literally going, please! And I was like, holy crap. That was an unexpected outcome, particularly from some folks who were very keen to say, for example, Tyrannus or Necrons of their day. So, yeah, it's definitely something we'll think about.
But I want my faction to convert to Sigmarism.
Yeah, exactly.
125 Warriors Chaos 8th Edition says Chaos Lords are the toughest mortals in Malice of the Warhammer world. What non-giant generic characters, such as Vampire Lords, etc., have a good shot against them in hand-to-hand? Sotek, go first, because before Andy can reject the purpose of the question. Wow, someone watches the show.
Funny.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say when you're dealing with like pure hand-to-hand, not many. They are kind of the creme de la creme. Now, granted, there are little things above them. You know, you have your demon princes, for instance, which are a whole nother category above.
Not mortal.
Oh, did he say mortal specifically?
Yeah, it's mortal, yeah.
Mortals. Okay, well, mortal. I mean, would a vampire really count as mortal, though? I would say no.
Actually, yes, if we're going very strict here, because it's the mortal realms, and vampires are from the mortal realms and not in the aether. So I'd say, strictly speaking, yeah, vampire lords would be a better.
Yeah, so definitely your vampire lords. I would say it's definitely... it tends to favor the Chaos Lords, but your Saurus Old Bloods will usually put up a good fight. Some of your Black Orc war bosses will be pretty scary. Not a lot, though. Not a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to broadly agree here with Sotek. The background for Warhammer is relatively clear, and that loosely says Chaos Warriors are rock hard. And they are. However, I am going to contradict the hyperbole of the Warrior of Chaos book. Are they the toughest mortals? No, they're not. There are all manner of things in the Warhammer world, ranging from ridiculous dragons to gigantic things, all sorts of stuff that can easily take them. But as you say, non-giant versions. And
generic characters
you say
as well.
That, and we move to generic, then we're in trouble. Because the Chaos Lords have got not just we have been up there fighting all of our lives. They have one advantage that no other species really does, and that's that they mutate. And that mutation, when it lands well, means that they often have all of the abilities of the big giant stuff, but not the size, meaning that they get enormous advantages that other species don't. Yeah, sure, individuals, if we're talking, peak Dragon Ogre or peak anything, because you got to remember that Chaos Lords are not, they're not generic. I mean, suppose they are. They're not special characters, but they're not generic. They're the peak of the Chaos Warriors. So we're just talking normal Chaos Warriors versus Chaos Lord. But I think broadly, I agree with Sotek. They are pretty much top tier in terms of what they can offer. Their stats are better in Warhammer. They are overall better in general. They are much better than orcs. A peak orc individual, sure, but in general, they're much better than orcs. Their weapon skill is stupid. They're much better than elves. Their weapon skill is stupid. Humans, better. All of them, they're better. Now, you might go, but they are humans. Well, kinda, but the rules often go a little bit special with chaos.
So are Space Marines, technically.
Yeah, okay. They are pretty much up there. So I don't think, for all this is hyperbole, and for all there are all manner of individuals who are better, it's not incorrect to say that on the relatively human scale, they're at the top there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hannibal, afternoon, gents. I've always thought it's ironic that chaotic factions like Skaven and Beastmen run on a rigid and orderly caste system. Thoughts? So, what I'll say is this kind of falls under the big umbrella of just because you see it in tabletop doesn't mean that's how it works in the actual world. Because for the tabletop, you have to have strict categorization so that when I put my mini on the table, you can understand what the rules are, and I don't have to spend 30 hours explaining each individual guy.
These are clan rats.
Yeah, so I would say when you get into the setting itself, a lot of this is gonna kind of break down pretty quickly. Now there are some like broad sweeping things, like for Beastmen, how big your horns are is pretty important. But you will find lots of exceptions that crop up all over the place as you get like your various individuals who are shamans or individuals that are powerful for other reasons. And then you get like other, like how the different beast tribes interact with each other. And that's even before you start breaking down that beastmen are technically a collection of different cultures, because centaurs and minotaurs are completely different things with their own unique cultures that are not technically part of the core beastmen, which are just gores. So it falls apart really quick if you put it under a magnifying glass for these chaotic factions especially. It's more just when you're playing a video game or a tabletop game, you got to be able to understand what you're looking at. So, and then the rules are then reinforced by the lore that tries to explain what you're looking at. So it makes it, they paint with a broad brush.
Yeah, and it tends to reinforce itself as well, because once the rules require something, this background setting will start kind of reinforcing that to ensure that what you see on the table when you're playing the game, or what you see in the computer game, matches what the lore says. But broadly speaking, chaotic small C factions like Skaven and Beastmen are pretty chaotic. But their representations of them inside the tabletop game and war games and similar kinda aren't. I agree completely. Yeah, agree completely.
Love God, hello. I hope you both are well. Where does Hellpit rank in terms of most dangerous or strongest Skaven city / hold? Since it's mentioned a lot, I would probably put it in the top 2.
Yeah,
with Skaven Blight.
Yeah, one of the issues we have with the Skaven is that we get lots of names, and we get the occasional ones throughout the old world, but beyond the old world, there's loads of other places. I imagine there is some significant ones in the east that have really just not been detailed that would almost certainly rank higher than Hellpit, very possibly. But Hellpit, as it currently stands, has had more focus put upon it. It's had entire articles written about it. So, thus, it's dangerous because we know what's there, and it's way up there as it currently stands. But I reckon in terms of the overall world scheme, it is probably one of several very dangerous places that the Skaven rule, and trying to pit one against the other is a little bit like saying what fruit is better. I mean, yeah, oranges, they're better than pomegranates, aren't they? No, they're just different. Pomegranates got all the little seedy things inside. Oranges got their segments and their slices. But that makes it better than an apple. It's only got one huge body, doesn't it, with a core? That makes it better than a pomegranate, doesn't it? No, they're just different fruit. And I think that's largely where we're going to go here. I have no idea why I've gone for ripe fruit as a metaphor, but I think it gives you an idea. Yes, they can be different sizes, but everyone's going to have different strengths and weaknesses. So, in this case, as it stands, I agree it's right up there at the top, but if we look at the overall Warhammer world as a whole, it probably isn't entirely unique in that regard. It'll be one of several extraordinarily dangerous places.
Skaven
or fruit, got it, said Hawk Oddly. Just want to bring that up because it amused me.
yeah, of course. Just like ogres or onions. Yeah, you got it. Warmonger, I can't believe we're getting a video about Sydney, Australia. I mean...
Oh, the heat down there sometimes.
Everything's trying to kill you, right? Singemeister, finally, the sloth episode. Sloth.
Slough.
That's a word that's come up in a... I have a weird brain thing with that word. Because, like, I know it's a word, but it doesn't sound like a word, and it drives me crazy. And it's come up in a recent thing lately.
Pronunciations as well, slough and slough, both of which are accurate for different expressions. Right, what's next?
Rick Chapman, Hellpit, best graded city, yes. Okay, well, that's good that there's a fan in the audience. So, someone's waving a banner there. Super Olak, yay, body horror. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of body horror.
Yeah, this one's going to be a thing.
Andy, you look dapper as heck yesterday. Formal Longbeards win.
It was quite nice. Got to put on a bow tie. Got to put on a nice shiny jacket. It was black, of course, because I was, as we mentioned at the beginning of the stream, hosting the World Anvil Awards, and great fun was had. And yeah, I even bothered to make my hair look relatively not messy. I mean, that's... I mean, what? Who even was that? But I did keep my pink headphones on because it made me laugh.
As you should.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. We might do a formal Lorebeards at some point. There had to be something pretty extraordinary going on.
Lorebeards Awards. That would be a fun one. We do a Lorebeards Awards where we award what we think is the best, this, that, and the other. Oh, that could be something. Or maybe the community does it, and we do big community votes for it. Oh,
yeah, we might have to do that this fall when we're getting ready for the 2nd anniversary.
The Beardies. The Beardies.
That's great.
This is. I'm already loving that idea. We'll have to do something with it.
Yeah, I'll write that down. Darius Rose, I cannot wait to hear of the great men / women of Hellpit that inspired me to be in the sciences. Also, Shockwave, Orochimaru, and Mayuri. The Master Mutator trope is super duper popular, especially over in like anime and a lot of the things we're getting from there. It makes for pretty easy villains, to be honest. It's a very understandable one where it's like a person pursuing like the perfect life form type trope. it's definitely one that, interestingly, it's kind of gotten a little bit more popular in a lot of mass media, which is interesting, especially when they're willing to kind of cater to a bit of a darker audience. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Darius Gulliman, my father is a monster. He did not give me the Turbo Man action figure, but the small man with a hammer did. Franz, he's my real father. Franz celebrated Festag with me, unlike my real father.
My dad sucks.
Ricky Chapman, now to attach the head of a giant to the body of a hydra, the legs of a stork, and the brain of a goblin.
Hey, Ricky, you're ready for the stream.
Yeah, you are quite ready. Though it's going to get way worse than that.
Oh yeah, it's going to get pretty bad.
There has been some shenanigans in Hellpit that will genuinely blow your mind because they're kind of just bonkers. Skylar Martin, why does Skaven equal Looney Tunes villain fit so well? Well, just because of the way they're written. They're funny. They have a very comical form of speech. They have very exaggerated everything. They have exaggerated form of speech. They have exaggerated paranoia. They have exaggerated like reflexes. So if you don't think too much about the kinds of stuff they actually do, they do come off as very funny, but like kind of similar to orcs and goblins. They're also very similar.
Yeah, I kind of agree, although I'd say the Skaven are much more so in that area, particularly if you take a look at how the orcs and the goblins matured through the different books where they're often described. The Skaven are almost always, although they have their horrific elements, truly horrific elements, given that touch of we're going to explode and die, ha ha ha, Acme weapon with an Acme rocket. And if we go with anything like, say, my game, they're not only ridiculously over this, that, and the other, and they also roll ridiculous dice rolls too, as my last game showed, where I couldn't help but fumble or crit everything, meaning that they were either the most competent things ever or literally the worst, which was also super fun. But I agree with you, they are often used in this mold, but I will say that as we're going to discuss today, particularly with the strength on the word with this mold, they are truly horrific creatures, and not just scary because they are scary ratmen things, but what they do is awful. And sometimes it's important that when you're dealing with the most disgusting, horrific, terrifying aspects of the Warhammer world, that you have some form of relief to stand against it. And combining that humor alongside this extraordinary darkness allows it to almost be more palatable, and allows it as a faction to exist in a fashion that it makes you go, yeah, I want to mess around with that. It's super fun. It's super horrible, but it's super fun. Where some other factions that are just pure horrible don't have that release, that outlet. So yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why the Skaven are so popular.
Yeah. Cole Patterson, would Molder be interested in necromancy, or do they only want to use living flesh, and if so, why? Molder would be interested in anything they could make work. The problem with dead flesh is that dead flesh doesn't make more flesh. Yeah, and Warpstone, when it's using for the sake of crafting, does have its limits, and death often is a rather annoying limit for Skaven. So
yeah. Look, yeah, I loosely speaking, life allows for more life, allowing you to head towards what is ultimately something that Clan Moulder are looking for, which is the ultimate stable breeds. They have to be stable. There's no point in just creating a big monster if you can't make more of those big monsters. The reason Clan Moulder is so extraordinarily rich is because they have been successful in breeding stable breeds of rat creatures that are truly horrific, and you can't breed with undeath. Now, will that mean that there's not a master mutator somewhere trying out the extents of what undeath could offer? Oh, there definitely will be. Definitely will be. They'll be trying to figure it out. Can they somehow graft together this perfect creation? Perhaps going down a little bit more if you know any other games like Vampire the Masquerade with the Simiche there. And their flesh crafters and what they have to offer. And they're undead using flesh in a variety of ways. Would the master mutators of Clan Moulder be doing the same? Well, at least a few of them probably are trying it, but ultimately, living flesh is what they're into.
Yeah, funny enough,
that's what they're doing.
What the problem with this here is that it butts up against the Skaven obsession of like capitalism. It doesn't make money And Clan Molder is all the clans are very much about making money.
Warp tokens! Exactly.
Yeah. Now, that being said, if you just step down to our Necroc department, you'll find plenty of this going on. But that's not who we're discussing today.
Yeah, totally.
John, man, just want to check something. I think you've said before that the Chaos Gods and all the other gods and spirits and demons are ultimately just varieties of etheric entities, if that is correct, or at least potentially correct. But that's good enough. I'm trying to sort out the religion of a fan fiction.
So the answer to these sort of questions is always yes, kinda, but. And the reason why we have to leave everything in this slightly grey, smudgy area is because if we go with strict readings of certain things, the answer is no to many of those questions. Because different writers have posed how the metaphysics of the Warhammer world works in different ways, and none of them are wrong. I remember having a conversation with Mark Gascoigne, who was he set up Black Library, and he was very much like, there's no such thing as canon for Warhammer. I don't like it. It restricts the readers. It restricts the writers. It restricts the Warhammer world. What we want is this big fantasy world with some core constants that we have in the background, and then we tell cool stories within those. And let's be as blunt as we can. The Aether, the Warp, the Immaterium, the whatever the hell you want to call it, is as far from a core constant as you can get, beyond the fact that it exists. Now, if you want to create a fan fiction where that is the case, you are correct to do so. 100%. And it will entirely work with almost 95% of everything that exists out there. So I say, go for it. But I will warn you, you will constantly butt up against the occasional piece of lore that says, you know that thing that we said is the case, it isn't with this, or this, or this. And that being the case, you're going to find that your answer, while it works for a really nice broad paintbrush stroke, doesn't necessarily work when you come in with a fine detail brush.
And that's like the whole fucking thing we do here.
Yeah, exactly. We're often obsessing over detail brushes.
Could Phil Hartman... Riz Marathi or
who's Phil Hartman? I feel like an idiot. Okay, I need to know who Phil Hartman is. Can the chat tell me? I feel like an idiot. I don't like not knowing Phil Hartman. Okay, I've got Phil Hartman. Is it him? I don't know.
I think he was just a really famous actor. I don't know who this is. Oh man.
I so 100% don't know. So all I can say is, maybe. Hey,
probably
Darius. I really apologize for not knowing who Phil Hartman is. Oh, I know who he is. Oh, holy crap! Yes. The answer to your question is sure.
Oh, Troy McClure. Yeah, Troy McClure.
I'm Troy
sure,
McClure,
of course.
Best known for. I know who Phil Hartman is. As an actor, he's brilliant.
We'll give him a definite maybe. Mornington Crest. I already answered that one. Watchdog, could there be a major clanhold equivalent to Hellpit? Yes. Scryer has Skavenblight. Like, they're in the capital. Yeah. So theirs is pretty massive. We actually, as your question kind of implies, we don't know where the headquarters of Clan Eshin or Clan Pestilence are. Presumably, they're we know Eshin is somewhere in the east, probably in Cathay, and we know that Pestilence is somewhere in the Southlands. But we don't know, where specifically. Presumably, they are great titanic horrors in their own right. But we don't know much about them.
Yeah, agree completely. So Scryer is easy because we have Skavenblight. And Skavenblight, Scryer stayed there, where all the rest of the clans emigrated out and founded their own, let's call them holds, elsewhere. They're great strongholds. I would argue that, yes, all of them do, and that there will be some competing examples for the claim for capital, particularly for the larger clans like Eshin and Pestilence. There are probably multiple places where you could call as the core, but wherever Nirglitch calls home is probably where Clan Pestilence is going to call their headquarters. And I would suggest, much like we were saying earlier on in the stream, that the stronghold of Clan Pestilence, let's just say there is one, it's going to fucking suck. It's going to be bad, man. And it's going to make Hellpit suddenly pale potentially, because Clan Pestilence is almost certainly the most powerful clan overall. It's enough to go to war with the entirety of the rest of this game.
Stream.
Lord Scroll Stream will give you a good idea of just how powerful Clan Pestilence is in comparison to the others. And Clan Eshin is enormously powerful and rich, but because Warhammer very rarely concentrates on the east, anything that lies beyond the World's Edge Mountains, it just very occasionally pops over there. We don't really get an idea of where Clan Eshin are, which is kind of appropriate because it's Clan Eshin and they're hiding. They are basically Clan Ninja. But we don't know what they've got over there, but we do know they dominate the east, and the likelihood of there being an enormous Clan Eshin equivalent to Hellpit is high, to the point that Clan Moulder ends up looking relatively small in comparison to clans like, say, for example, Eshin and Clan Pestilence. And that's not unfair. They are a very focused group. They're extremely powerful with what they do, and they become extremely rich because of this. But they're not this great world-spanning force like, say, Clan Pestilence is.
Yep. Nick D, outside of the Underway, do we have descriptions of the underground portions of the Warhammer world? Is it like D&D's Underdark? How deep does it go? So yes and no at the same time. There are generally, when you're dealing with like, oh, how deep can we go? You tend to be dealing with Skaven and like Night Goblin stories are usually going to be your go-tos. And the answer is stupidly down. Stupidly deep. And Warhammer does have kind of the concept of that there is a whole nother world deep down there with its own horrors and forgotten nightmares and demons somehow and all sorts of other nasty gribblies. There isn't tons of exploration into it. Generally speaking, when you're dealing with the deep dark, it's usually like dwarfs or greenskins, but they're one of the things that Warhammer does well is almost in virtually every single story that deals with going underground, especially if it's like an examination type story, they will always hit a point where that point of view character will go, we don't know what's beyond this point. Like, it keeps going down. We don't know what's down there, but we know it's bad. And nobody goes down.
In the Immortal Worlds of Iron Maiden, fear of the dark. And fear of the dark lies at the heart of a core metaphor for human existence, and what can't be seen. And thus, most of our stories that deal with what lies into that big cave mouth generally say a monster. And Warhammer reflects this completely. And because Warhammer has various species that can delve into the dark with relative ease, say, for example, the dwarfs. The dwarfs can see in darkness. It's a big hole in the Warhammer Fantasy roleplay rules, for example, I tried to patch and got kind of vetoed, which I'm still upset about, that dwarves can see in the dark. They just can. So that means you need to do a different fear, because we love applying the core fears of humanity onto the other hero species around us, meaning that when the dwarves delve down, there's something worse beneath them. And this continues down. Now, to answer your question specifically, pardon me, do we have descriptions of underground portions of the Warhammer world? Yes, we do. Loads of them. And I do mean loads. We've got loads of discussions about the ancient dwarf network of tunnels, many of which have now been collapsed and taken over by greenskins, Skaven, and all manner of other gribblies. And we do have an equivalent of the D&D's Underdark. I would argue we've got a bigger, more complex, and more varied version than the Underdark. This happens to somewhat surprisingly be something I have read about. And we have far more variations of it you might imagine. We have entire underground oceans in the Warhammer world where fleets of ships ply their trade. Dark Elves have got this great underground subterranean area over in Nagaroth, which we don't often talk about, but we did come up, for example, in our Fishman stream. So as unlikely as this may sound, go check out our Fishman stream. It's not just underground is full of nice airy pockets we can move through. It's absolutely subterranean and submerged in many places. And the horrible things that are down there, the troglodytic creatures, are often described in a multiple array of places. So how deep does it go? Very. And you often find at the very darkest points, because we are, after all, scared of the dark, they will then go, and beneath it all, there's an entrance through to the demons that infest the world at its very roots. It's not an uncommon metaphor. So yes, there's a lot there.
Yep. Sidgemeister, could Ikit Claw catch the Roadrunner? No, because the Roadrunner, now, he would try, nobly, yeah, but I think Ikit Claw would make very close company, begrudgingly so, with the Wile E. Coyote. All right, time to discuss a secret hidden faction of unclear provenance with access to advanced tech capable of destroying a city in hate-filled relationship with the Lizardmen. Oh, it's the Skaven today. All right, you had your day. Shush. We gave you a whole stream. It's there. You can watch it every day.
You certainly can.
Godzilla, the 40K stream really does make me wonder how the Chaos Dwarfs would adapt to aircraft. Like maybe they make dedicated anti-air missiles, flat cannons, or even their own airships. Probably all of the above.
Yeah, I think it's actually somewhat of a current hole in Chaos Dwarf lore, and that's the fact that they don't go up. And of all the dwarf species, they're the one that seems most likely that they would do so. If we take a look at the holds have got their war balloons, they've got their gyrocopters, they've got their various thunder barges or whatever else. And the fact that the Chaos Dwarves don't have an equivalent is just something I think that hasn't been written yet. They probably do already.
Yeah.
It's almost certainly the case. If you take a look at, say, for example, the Chaos Dwarf fleets, and this is, broadly speaking, a group that are kind of land-bound. They have enormous fleets that can go to war across the oceans. They are almost certainly going to have, equally, flying machines. They are tech kings. The chances of them not having figured out what is relatively rudimentary tech in the greater scheme of things is almost zero. They are going to have some equivalent, I think.
Yeah, their current writing relies very heavily on like flying monsters with your like Lamasus, your different kind of Torai species, and like the magma dragons. But to me, it's completely silly that with how they've kind of solidified, especially in the modern world or modern setting, that they wouldn't have terrifying aircraft of some kind.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it. Did you see the Chaos Dwarf Old World entry for Golden Demon? They, I think it was the Lamasu that they did.
No, I didn't.
Freaking amazing. I'll go see if I can find it while you're answering some questions, just so I post it to you. It's amazing.
Sure.
It was entirely scratch built and wasn't a Games Workshop model. And it's like, wow.
And it won a Golden Demon. Wow. Damn. Okay.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Donovan, are there any smaller clans that try and use both the powers of flesh crafting and diseases to like have an infective disease which causes flesh to mutate? Yes. There are hybridizations of all the great clans that exist all over the place, and there are smaller versions of them, often known as sometimes Thrall clans will sometimes just be a warrior clan that's in Thrall, but a lot of the times they will adapt the methods of their overseer faction. But that being said, when Clan Pestilence got the Lustria book expansion, one of the things it leaned rather heavily into was the idea that early Clan Pestilence had a lot of Molder influence still, and they were really, really big into a lot of those different aspects, which resulted in creating a lot of weird kind of what we would now perceive as kind of almost hybrid creatures between Pestilence and Molder. And those creatures are still canonical, and they still exist in the greater sphere. But even when you're dealing with just Molder, you're going to have stories, if you were to get into the nitty gritty, of Clan Pestilence putting in orders with Clan Molder, getting a bunch of beasts, and then making their own quote unquote improvements, which will result in weird hybrids. You will have Clan Molder trying to hire or buy secrets or steal secrets from Clan Pestilence to improve their own systems, which may or may not have disastrous effects. Like Skavendom is very messy. Oh, I did see that. Now I think about it. Oh my god, that was gorgeous. Oh my,
really good. I mean, holy heck. So that's Raphael Boyon, probably mispronounced his name, who got the Old World Gold Medal at Adepticon, and it's just so gorgeous. So I just thought I'd mention that just on the side, just Chaos Dwarfs came up, but we've got some Skaven to deal with, so let's not hold on that too long. What's next in our big chat of chat?
Last one before we get into today's intro is Colbo. Just Throt the Unclean, remember Lurk Snitch Tongue's rebellion. Do the swarming masses of Hellpit Skaven slaves remember? How do they feel about it? The Skaven slaves, doubtful. I doubt any of the Skaven slaves that were alive for that are still around. And the life of a Skaven slave is very, very short. As for Throt, I honestly probably not. Well, he might. Throt himself, I don't think was overly involved in that. We know that good old Lord Verminkin remembers because he very much hates Thankful or because of that whole incident. So I would say he probably remembers it, but we will actually be talking about Throt quite a bit in this video. Obviously, he's pretty important to what goes on in Hellpit. Throt is a bit of a mad genius, and I would honestly say he probably isn't the kind of guy to remember things like this because his brain is just elsewhere doing other things. But there are certainly some within Hellpit that would remember.
Yeah, I mean, let me go run back. So that'll be what Dragon Slayer. So we're talking about. I mean, it's very possible, depending on which version of Throt that we go with. He wasn't even born yet, because time.
Yeah. Well, I think
Skaven don't live long.
Yeah, I think Throt's.
I can't remember how old he is.
He's
in
not
the current version.
Ancient, but he's
because he's not.
Yeah,
he's a master mutator and a relatively.
Yeah, I want to say he's in I want to say if I recall correctly, he's somewhere in like his 30s.
Because your average Skaven doesn't last more than like 3-4 years.
Yeah, because I think the only major
just
date
take a look
he
at
has...
say Quick Head Taker. Quick Head Taker's a baby in comparison to what everybody else thinks. He's only 4. And Dragon Slayer takes place, as I recall, somewhere in the mid 2500, somewhere around there, 25056, somewhere around there. So that being the case, very possibly he wasn't born. I'm not sure we have a fixed age for Throt because I've not thought about it for ages.
The only fixed date he has in my memory is when he makes the first Hellpit Abomination, but I don't remember exactly when it is.
No, I don't remember when that is either. He's super awesome, but I'm not certain he's old enough to remember it. But even if he did, in the greater scheme of things, it's a pretty minor event. Because the place is in a state of constant small c chaos and turmoil. It's also in a state of, to a degree, big C chaos, as we're going to get onto, because it is a proper crazy place. But I do think we're ready to go. Are we ready to go?
We are indeed. So if you've got a little intro for us,
that was a lovely chat. Thanks, everyone, for the super chats.
Yeah, thank you.
Beyond showing a nice bit of Golden Demon art along the way, Hellpit. Let's now dive in. I remember clearly the first time when I read about her Hellpit as a place. And it was back in 1996. I was working for Games Workshop at the time. I was a Games Workshop red shirt, as it was at the time, the thin red line that protected the front line, the bastions of Games Workshop's various shops across the retail network. And the Skaven Army List came out, and I had always been a fan of Skaven. I had, at that point, I think about, 5,000 points worth of Skaven. For those of you who don't know, that's an awful lot of miniatures in Warhammer, what was then 3rd to 4th edition. It was 4th edition in particular, that era. And the new Army List came out and had been written by Andy Chambers. And in there, we got ourselves a bunch of new stories and a bunch of new locations that had been added to the background. And Hellpit got its first big description, and it was nasty. We got ourselves some, what for me were super fun, exciting details. And they dialed up a little bit on the hell part of the Hellpit. They located this great Skaven stronghold on the far side of the great frozen expanse that is Kislev and Troll Country. And Troll Country is generally described as a blasted wasteland that lies to the north of Kislev. And Hellpit sat in this great crevasse that was constantly bubbling and churning and throwing up the noxious fumes that the earth itself threw upwards, with this horrible grey smog hanging around it. And in the heart of this crevasse lay Hellpit itself, and it was the home of Clan Moulder. And in there, the very worst abominations that the Skaven created could be found. And the description as presented there was particularly infernal. Lakes of lava and all manner of horribleness. But it pulled out a couple of key details for me that stood out. The first was that Hellpit was caught up in the Great War against Chaos. So 200 years ago, if we're just going by the end of the world timeline, 200 years before the end of the world, we have the Great Incursion of Chaos, so it's often referred to as the Great War against Chaos, that happened in 2302 in the Imperial calendar. And in that war, As of our cool, the ever-chosen of the era, bound together all the great tribes of chaos and invaded down through Kislev and wiped out everything along his way. We presume, given what we now know from the old world, that he didn't just come down one route, that he came across the World's Edge Mountains and wiped out all of what we know of Kislev from the old world, almost entirely. It was devastating. And they also assaulted Hellpit. And this is one of the little details that I kind of loved, because the Skaven got properly attacked. Really heavily. Enormous hordes of chaos arriving. And what happened? They won. Such a lovely little detail. They won. And how did they win? They went down, and then they just unleashed all of their horrors into all of the corridors, the passageways, the great crevasses that lay there. And they rampaged everywhere, slaying all of the chaos forces that had been trying to push into Hellpit. It's also worth noting here that this is an important component of understanding that Skaven aren't chaos. Many people generally put forward Skaven, oh, they're just chaos, aren't they? No, they're small c chaos, not big C chaos. They're not part of the big four, if you wish. The Horned Rat is not a chaos god for all. When we move to Age of Sigmar, things twist around a little bit. We're not there. We're in the Warhammer world. And the Skaven fight against chaos with as much fury as all of the other species and factions and groups in the old world. And the Skaven win. Unlike, for example, what happens in Kislev, where it takes a great combination of different forces to hold back chaos, the Skaven don't have this issue, but they do call in for help, because the Clan Moulder by itself could not handle the enormous onslaught that was coming. They end up getting relief from the south, another force comes in, slams into the side of the chaos forces on the outside as they come bubbling up out of Hellpit and destroy the chaos forces that are there, driving them back completely. It is an enormous event. I remember reading it going, that's freaking cool. That's not what I expected, because at that point, the standard story of Magnus the Pious was what broke the hordes, was kind of undermined. And as we all know, we do love Skaven for undermining everything. They are the ones that come up from below and give you the shock surprise. And the shock surprise here, the untold story of the Great War against Chaos, was sort of revealed that the Skaven were also responsible for breaking Azavar Kul's forces. And that's kind of cool. And I remember reading it all the way back in 1996 going, I'm not sure they realized, but I'm not sure they know what they've done. Andy Chambers, do you know? Was this Andy Chambers? Was this Bill King? I don't know. But do you realize that you've basically said, if it wasn't for the Skaven, Azavar Kul might have won against Magnus the Pious? Love it! This is great! Because I always, from that point and to now, was looking at the lore and trying to see it in the greater whole, not just the individual spikes that sit up, and figuring out how it all works together. Azavar Kul had been broken not just by the dwarves and the humans, but by the Skaven, unknown allies from beneath. And then at the end of the Hellpit write-up came the reason, and part of why they were so important, not just Clan Moulder and all their craziness, but because one of the Council of 13 himself was there. And it was the first time the whole concept of the Council of 13 had been properly nailed down. And he was even named Verminkin, who was there. And everything that Verminkin had done from this single stronghold had been enough, with the enormous amount of money that they had gathered, to move him up the pecking order of the Council of 13. And I remember reading this going, wow, Skaven have become a lot more interesting, a lot more detailed than just simply a bunch of rat men who are going to inherit the world. They've now got a lot more society, and they're now a part of the Warhammer world in the way they hadn't been previously. It's not just the staunch races of humanity and elves and dwarves. It's all of the mortal realms trying to fight off against the incursions of chaos. And Hellpit was a core component of that. I loved it. Clearly, I wasn't the only one that loved Hellpit, because Bill King later on takes Gotrek and Felix there in Dragon Slayer. This is around about 4 years later. Super lovely. We get a whole bunch of stories that go down there. But it wasn't going to be for a few more years until Hellpit really became its own thing. Up to this point, Hellpit was just an infernal home for Clan Moulder. I was working for Black Industries as a freelancer, writing Warhammer Fantasy roleplay stuff when White Dwarf 311 came out. And White Dwarf 311, I was getting sent White Dwarfs at that point by Games Workshop because I was basically, oh, he's got it there, perfect. That's literally perfect. I don't have my copy here, it's in storage. Although I do have one of my storage vans in the background. I know you don't care, but I've got one there and there's over 400 games in there and we're slowly going to be decanting them into my house. I'm so excited I'm getting my games back. But we don't need to be knowing about all the ridiculous number of games that I have sitting only around about, I don't know, 30 paces behind me in a big storage container that I'm about to put into my house. As I say, I'm so excited. But that aside, White Dwarf 311 came out, and I remember reading through it and going, well, holy shit, someone likes Dante's Inferno. And so, but you know what? I quite like this too. Now, you might not know the epic poem that is Dante's Inferno, but in there we get ourselves a lovely description of the 9 circles of hell, and Games Workshop picked that up and ran with it and made the 9 circles of hell pit, going down depth by depth by depth by depth, down to the horrors that lay at the very bottom. I'm not going to detail them here. I'm not going to go into any of the detail other than when I read that article I went, well, Hellpit's my favorite place in the world. I had already used Hellpit because, let's be honest, I'm a Go Trek and Felix fanboy like everyone else. The second they went there, it's like, well, my party's going to go there. Oh, damn straight. We're going to go in there and do things too. And it was awful and they all died. And I was like, maybe I regret doing that. But it was good. Hellpit was horrible. And I liked that for what it was. TPK Central. Total Party Kill if you don't know your roleplay game analogies.
As it should be.
Indeed, it was horrible. But what the party did allowed another party elsewhere to succeed because they held back a great horror that was about to be released. And when I reread and then reread again that article about what Hellpit was, I realized that, yeah, things have moved on. This Hellpit is so much bigger, so much nastier, so much meaner, and so much more horrible than what we had before. We had the idea that we had the breeding pits of Hellpit, this horrible lava-filled place with noxious fumes, and it took that idea and it said, you know, each detail you can imagine, I'm about to crank it up a little bit. It's not just big, it's huge. It's not just infested, it's completely infested with horrors. They don't just have some richness, they have so many piles of gold and warp tokens and raw warpstone that they literally have uncounted hordes of Skaven scribes attempting to account it all and make it all make sense, because the Skaven, as Sotek said somewhat earlier, are often depicted as a parody of capitalism. They're often shown and satirizing almost what the Western view of what capitalist society should be. They are an insidious, horrible bunch of Scrooges sitting there hunched over their desks, attempting to accumulate everything and own everything and then make use of it according to their own whims. And Clan Moulder were a perfect example of this. I loved it, and I then immediately set another one of my games there because it had changed. Woohoo! I've got a new version of the Hellpit, and I'm going to use it. And that loosely brings it up, because I don't want to go into the details because it's going to be so important to the stream. That loosely brings us up to where we are. Hellpit is the stronghold of Clan Moulder. Unlike other clans, like, say, Clan Pestilence, that are far more diffuse across the world, Clan Moulder's has a single place and a bunch of outposts where they basically tout their wares. And Clan Moulder's center, where all their master mutators are creating all their stuff, is Hellpit. This is where it happens. And it is such an important stronghold that not only has it gathered a significant amount of all of the Skaven's wealth in it, that when it calls for help, the other clans come because it's so rich. And they don't want the richness that Clan Moulder presents, both in terms of its abominations, its horrors that they can purchase, but also the literal richness that they've given to them. They don't want it to be lost. Because if Chaos, for example, takes Hellpit, then everything that they've given to Clan Moulder is gone forever. It is a great capitalist nightmare. It is quite literally the worst potential outcome. So the Skaven rally to protect the place. And that makes it an interesting location if nothing else does. So through the course of this stream, we're going to be diving through the 9 layers of Hellpit. We're going to be discussing Clan Moulder one more time. We're going to be discussing many of the inhabitants, including Verminkin, and of course the infamous Throt the Unclean, Master Lore Mutator of, well, he's just horrendous, as you're about to occur. Although, to begin with, he was nothing more than a basic strength 5, relatively skinny rat with a man catcher. I remember that clearly all the way back in the 4th edition, which is where we started with our introduction. So, Hellpit. As I said, I'll keep this one short because we've got a lot to cover. Where will we go first?
First, we're going to go get caught up on Super Chats. And then we'll go from there. So we left off with Charles C.K. Given our hyper-capitalist, do they have some equivalent of trademark or copyright enforcement? If so, do they have an enforcing body?
No, they don't. They're much more like the hyper-capitalists of the 19th century. In fact, trademark and copyright enforcement goes against capitalism as a general idea. You should be able to just use anything in any way you want. It's regulation. They're hyper-capitalists. They're not regulated capitalists. So you'll find that they are much more free with such matters. The reason that Clan Moulder is so successful is because they have all the stores, the vats, the wealth, and everything else in Hellpit to do what they do. Anyone else who attempts to do what they do, and they do attempt it. The other clans are making their own version of Clan Moulder stuff. They're just weaker. They're not stable. That's the big one, and we're going to discuss this as we discuss the Master Mutators. Creating stable species is what it's all about. The very first descriptions of Hellpit discuss about the rat wolves, the rat trolls, the rat ogres, all of which are stable creations of Clan Moulder that came from Hellpit. The rat ogres are almost ubiquitous now across all of Skaven society. They all came from Clan Moulder, and the developments of the rat ogres, as they try to take them into new place, again, it's Clan Moulder that is successfully doing it. The rest, for all they experiment, generally only get a success here or there, and they don't create something stable. They don't create something that can be replicated again and again and again, meaning that the slave pens of Clan Moulder are full of extraordinarily capable, very expensive Ferraris, while everyone else is selling extremely cheap crap cars. Clan Moulder are basically peak. Everyone else is crap. And that's loosely what we're speaking about. It's not that they have copyright, it's just that they're better.
Yeah, there's actually a whole element of Skaven society that's very funny about how whenever they create something, whether you're dealing with like Clan Pestilence making disease, or Clan Moulder making creatures, or Clan Scryer making war machines and stuff, oftentimes when they are making records or notes, they will purposefully record things wrong because they expect someone to copy or steal it. So they make purposely wrong additions so that when someone tries to recreate it, it will go disastrously wrong and probably kill them. So there's a whole thing where stealing is expected.
Actually, I'll go further. Copyright, according to the Skaven, it can be best expressed with clanation. And by that I mean, if they find you've got their stuff, they will pay to kill you.
Yep.
And that is often a thing. If you transgress into somebody else's area of speciality, you will often find that one of your rivals will rise up and say, no, that's mine, not yours, mine, what of tokens? Kill him. Now, obviously, assassins are commonplace in Skaven society, but they will try to protect what's theirs, and Clan Moulder very much does attempt to protect what's theirs. They have a unique selling point. They have something that is very much Clan Moulder's thing, and whenever someone transgresses, they will often try to stop it. So it's not that there's copyright, but they do have an enforcing body, if you wish. Clanation.
Yep. Cody Smith, turfs are better capitalists. Their markets are always bullish.
That's a good one. That made me laugh. Good one. Like that.
Sedge Badger, stream idea, designing Pestilence's own Hellpit. Yeah, it could be fun one day. That would be a good city building one.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good one because Clan Pestilence currently doesn't have it. And I think that the great temple cities of Clan Pestilence would be interesting because they are almost certainly one of the most religious of all of the groups. After all, their core troop, the Plague Monk, is very much Clan Pestilence territory. So I think having some sort of great temple city, what their great worship of disease essentially manifests as, would be a super fun stream.
Absolutely. Charles C.K., how do Skaven keep time? Given most of them live only a few years, but their leaders live forever. How years? Also, they can't track days by the sun. So Yeah, Skaven, they actually, they do have the day split into 13 bells, as opposed to two sets of 12 hours, which is convenient. So the Skaven do keep time day-wise, but like beyond that, who cares?
Small C chaos here. There is nothing consistent. There is nothing certain in the Under Empire. You're 100% correct. They do not keep the concept of day and night inside their various Under version cities. They're not sitting there going, hey, we're now on Tuesday or Thursday or Festag or whichever day, Valentine or whichever day you want to go for. They're not doing that. They're not keeping days in place. They've got their bells ringing, and the bells that are ringing in the various temples to the Horned Rat are not ringing consistently or necessarily in a set time period because they are small C chaos. Some places will be deeply regimented and time will be important because they've got, time. You have to do it by this point. Yes, go, Whipmasters. Go. You must. And others, it'll just be a big sprawling mess. The thing with Skaven is there is nothing that's consistent. So how do they do it? Inconsistently.
Yep. Darius Rose, Franz, some of the electric counts. Gilliman in his Happy Meal did not get his Lightning McQueen toy cars. Got Chick Hicks instead. He is distraught. Yeah, it is always the worst when you get the toy you weren't hoping for. Early gotcha machines before the internet. Kobo, Skaven and Hellpit, Dark Elves at Gron, the hero the Warhammer world has, but not the ones it wants. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that Warhammer does well, but often forgets that it does. And by that I mean, Warhammer is all about the shades of grey. It's not a black and white world of order and destruction. But then they forget that, and they make it a black and white world of order and destruction. They forget that the orcs love a good scrap as much as anyone else, and the orcs are kind of afraid of chaos. They forget that the Skaven rise up against chaos often in extraordinary hordes. They forget that the Dark Elves are solely responsible for holding back and using chaos in a variety of ways. And they tend to go, right, we need to have a big campaign or a big war. We'll just put all the bad guys together for this campaign, while the story about that particular war they might be facing says the Skaven were against chaos. So yes, I agree completely, but I feel many of the writers and often the game balancing stories that they try to build for the Warhammer world forgets it completely.
Yep. Captain Magua can't make the stream proper, but if they started giving Red Ogre's breasts, they should be renamed to Clan Boulder. Oh my god, get out. Oh my god, get out. Darius Rose, Stone Cold Ironhide. Whoever wants me to trash this place, give me a hell yeah! Also, does Hellpit trade monsters with other races / factions? They will. Yeah, like Skaven are pretty open to quote unquote allying or trading with other races. They are not against it at all. If they see an advantage in it, if you have something that they want. So the idea that there is some Night Goblin up in Red Eye Mountain that's managed to somehow make a trade with some Master Molder or Packmaster, that's not by any means out of the realm of possibility. Or some Chaos Lord, or a very, very unscrupulous human who just wants to have big, horrible beasties for some reason. It's not at all out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that you definitely get inside various stories. And Hellpit, as we go through its description, particularly with its various 9 circles of Hellpit, as we go through those, we're going to get an obvious place where they could go. Having said that, it's so crammed full of Skaven, all of whom are attempting to gain the attention of Clan Molder, all of whom are trying to get into the Master Mutators so that they can be the ones that get hold of the great benefits that they could secure if they ally with or buy from Clan Molder, that other species kind of don't really get much of a chance because this game will kill them if they're sitting there trying to do it. The only real place you're ever going to get Clan Molder's best is Hellpit, but there is already an uncounted number of Skaven trying to get Clan Molder's best. Imagine it a little bit like this. Imagine it's Black Friday. And there is inside this store, let's just call it electronic store number 1, and it's called electronic store number 1 is Hellpit. So Hellpit has got 14 televisions, and outside, ready with their Black Friday money, is a great horde of 10,000 wanting to get those 14 tellies. The problem with what you suggest is, do they trade? Yeah, of course, they'll trade with anyone because they are kind of ultimate capitalists, but they don't need to, because there's 10,000 Black Friday starved purchasers on the outside from the various clans of Skaven, all of whom are stabbing each other in the back to be the first to get through the enormous gates that lead into Hellpit and be the ones that get access to the very best creation that Hellpits have to offer. Meaning that Clan Molder don't need to go to anyone else. They are very much in a seller's market. They have the best produce on the market, and the Skaven will pay for it, meaning that whilst others could, there's very few examples where they would ever get an opportunity to do so because the Skaven are too busy doing it themselves.
Yeah, there's in order for that to be kind of like a realistic thing, you're probably more dealing with a minor clan. All the time, it's very accurate though. It'd have to be like a pretty crazy story with someone offering something pretty wild in order to have Clan Molder's attention. But
And just to drop up to answer one of the questions there from Cody Smith, who says, what's the Skaven's equivalent of Tickle Me Elmo? The Abominations, for example, when they were first created stably, suddenly everyone was out for their Tickle Me Elmo abomination. Everybody needed to have one of those in their armies. Everybody wanted Clan Molder's best. Everybody was going up to Hellpit going, give it to me. There was various messages going backwards and forwards, and an enormous throng of Skaven arrives outside Black Friday style trying to buy it. So, yeah. Tickle Me Elmo. It's an abomination. Toss Elmo. Tickle Elmo.
Okay, a little last one here. Shades of Grey thing reminded me of my fan fiction history. News of the Sigmar Guild equivalent winning victory. Period victory was for scarce, but natural almost as a network of magical beings and meeting in the courts to make sure the wars spread quickly. The roads would act. I believe it turns out to be some bad guys that also don't like chaos and want the Lamians actually do something. Well, I mean, Lamians do a lot in the setting. It's a matter of like, if you have to read deep for it. But like, if you get around a lot of Black Library books, they show up a lot more than you might think. But if you just stick to kind of like the main beats, you'll miss them pretty easily. But they're always out there.
Yeah, agreed. The Lamians are, I sort of agree with you. They're often forgotten because they are kind of the master spy manipulators of not just the vampires, but the Warhammer world in general. There's very few that match their capabilities and their ability to slip into almost any society, manipulate it from afar. And they are forgotten. So I don't think you're wrong to focus on it to a degree. I think it's all right. Go for it.
But with that, it's time to begin our exploration of Hellpit proper.
9 circles first?
Seems 9 circles first. So we're going to start at the surface and we're going to work our way down.
Yeah.
And I will... like Andy said earlier, I will warn you, if you've read Dante's Inferno, you're going to have a whole lot of, hold on a minute, I've seen this one before. It is not subtle at all.
However, it does make for a super cool place.
Yeah. So, and like, the part that made me really, really laugh is so the entrance of Hellpit. I mean, that's easy thing to start with. We'll start with the entrance. Is that when you approach Hellpit, Hellpit is fairly unique in a really fun way for a Skaven city, because unlike, say, Skaven Blight or a lot of the Undercities, it kind of has one main direct entrance, like a grand entrance that's very like, you're in Hellpit, with big neon sign, which is usually not how Skaven operate. But to the point where it has... So the entrance to Hellpit is a gigantic gate. So there's this huge, massive construction of iron covered in warpstone gems, and it's got like all these different little entryways where screaming people are put into the wall on a regular basis. So there's always like men and women, like humans, primarily, apparently, just screaming in agony next to like dead people just there.
Yay!
And once again, ripped hilariously straight from Dante's Inferno, at the top of the gate, it literally has the "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here," presumably in Queekish.
Yeah, indeed. Holy scrolls to the horned rat that mark that you should really not be coming in here. It's also worth noting that the description you get in 311 is different to the one that we get inside Dragonslayer, where it's a giant Skaven head that you, as I recall, it's been a while since I read that one. It's a giant Skaven head that you go in through this great gate. But they can very easily be conflated, because if we take a look at the description that we get in 311, White Dwarf that is, we can very easily say that it's both a combination of this great hellish and this great hellish maw at the bottom of this crevasse where there's lava and there's bubbling horror. And it's not just that though, this place is absolutely crowded.
Yeah, so once you're through the main gate, you have to get across the Skaven equivalent of the River Styx, which of course, because it's Warhammer, it's a big old river of lava. And just like Dante's Inferno, there is a guardian that ferries people across this big river of lava. And it is, he doesn't have a name, he's just known as the Guardian. And it's this big old rat monster that has warpstone for eyes, which is not an unusual motif in Skavendom. We do have a number of characters who do that. And he ferries this stone boat thing across. And instead of the original story with of Dante's Inferno, where it's like the people who weren't baptized are along the shores trying to get across. In this case, it's thousands upon thousands of Skaven basically at the New York Stock Exchange screaming at the Guardian that they should be allowed to cross because they want to parlay with the Master Mutators to get some kind of deal. And it's this rather somewhat comical scene of just thousands of rats trying to scream at this guy to basically Uber them across. And his job,
one way of describing
it. His job is to basically figure out who has enough of a good offer to be brought across, which probably involves bribing him.
Almost certainly. I really quite like this one because when you, I remember when I first read it, it gave me a version of the Skaven that we'd never had before. And let me explain. The Hellpit Warren, the great layers of the city itself, are all underground, as you'd expect. We've got ourselves these labyrinthine tunnels that you can't get access to, and they're not very neatly defined with layer 1, 2, 3 down to 9. It's just a mess, okay? And they've got these broad layers, and I was like, this sounds like the Skaven. This is what I'm used to. And then you get the entry point. They don't have the entry points barring this major gate and presumably secret stuff for Clan Moulder to get out, which means all the Skaven that want to get there have to crumb over land. It's new. This is not how Skaven normally work. This is an open location. This isn't like, for example, Skavenblight Hidden, nobody really knows about it. The various places like Fester, Spike, or whatever, they're all underground underneath great mountains. This isn't like this. This is an enormous gate covered with the holy psalms of the Horned Rat. It's stalling all of the great things that Clan Moulder have done. And it's in this chaos Big Sea wasteland, because when the Chaos Hordes laid siege here some 200 years ago, they mutated the place. There is no life here. It is broken. It is an absolutely fractured hellscape of a surrounding. And the Skaven are here on the surface. Many of them having got for a long queues trying to get into hell. All of them trying to get in, and they're not necessarily the only thing, but it's mostly Skaven, and they get into the crevices, they hear the screaming. Basically, they're going through their own horror show of, I don't know, Halloween Hell House, as things are jumping out of them, and it's awful, until they eventually arrive at the entity that they're trying to persuade to let them in. And they are thronging there in their thousands to get into hell. Plus, presumably, Hellpit's own forces, which can come in and out and do its own thing too. This is an open Skaven location, which is, as far as the Warhammer world sounds, quite different. It's just different.
Yeah.
And I really love it because it adds its own character. If you go there as a PC, if you're playing a role-playing game, this isn't a good location, because it's a location that you can creep up on through the hellscape of, I don't know, geysers and lava flats and all sorts of weird planes. You get there and you can see actual Skaven on the surface, war parties that have come to try and buy some rat ogres, various groups. You can see the returning parties from Clan Moulder themselves who have been out trying to rustle up beasts. That is also cool. All of these things are on the surface and seen. They are public. This isn't the Skaven don't exist. This is public. So our great gate into hell, where our guardian sits there and only lets certain people across, is only part of the whole process. And this process of Hellpit is open. And this is so different to, say, the Under Empire that you get underneath, say, I don't know, the Empire.
Yeah, one of the things that's really, really nice about this is it works so well. If you imagine that for Clan Moulder, they want to make the process of getting to them as excruciating as possible, so that only the people that are the most serious and have the most to offer will make the trip. And for Skaven, coming over ground is such a brutal, like, functionally unnecessary but painful process to basically torture them. Skaven don't like going over ground. Most Skaven never come above ground in their life, and when they do, they think they're gonna fall up into the sky. And it's like they don't know what rain is. They don't know what, like, a lot of wind and storm. Like, it's a horrible experience for them. And Clan Moulder they are connected to the Under Empire. There are notes about how they are able to get out through various tunnels, but they don't let anybody in. They force them to make this odyssey over the surface world, specifically to mess with them. So that they can be in the most comfortable bargaining position.
And let's be as clear as we can. Skaven are cowards.
Oh, yeah.
Skaven are cowards. So the first thing that most people generally say is, why aren't they killing each other? Why is there these great big thronging groups of Skaven? Skaven settlements work. Skaven locations work. And by that I mean they're not always killing each other. Why? Because they're scared they'll die themselves. The great mistake of war, the great mistake of understanding, say, your average Hollywood movie war, is thinking that people just charge at each other. They kind of don't. The great brawling melees that you get whenever you see a war movie, of, say, for example, a classic war movie like Troy or whatever, they all just run at each other. They kind of don't. Everyone is scared for their life. They have to build themselves up. And the Skaven are worse. So if they've got, say, for example, this warlord who sent his agents and all of the bodyguards for this agent and all of the bodyguards for those bodyguards, and they're shuffling along the surface, terrified, as wind is whipping up. What is this wind? This is horrible. Wind normally means plague wind. We're all going to die. Ah! They're crawling along the surface, really upset. There's another group coming as well. They'll eye each other, but they're not attacking each other, because if they attack, the other side might attack them. And they're scared they'll die. They would only attack the other party if there was a reason to do so. And if they attack, they might lose some of their numbers, and they're afraid. So they all come piling into Hellpit, and they're all eyeing each other extremely nervously. Now, if they've got a reason to attack, like, for example, I think they're richer than us, I think they're going to get in and we're not, we have to do something. They'll be chittering amongst themselves about how they're going to be able to do this without suffering casualties and losing their lives. Because the more lives they lose, the less chance they've got of ever getting back with what they're here to purchase. So, yes, sure, there's going to be a lot of backbiting and stabbing and war that sits between these various factions, but equally, most of them won't. Skaven society actually works, and it works because of fear. And as the musk of fear spreads, all the various groups withdraw quickly. Because, as we know, Skaven squirt the musk of fear when they're afraid. And in this environment, they're almost constantly afraid. In many respects, Hellpit and its construction, the way that Clan Moulder have done it, understands Skaven. They understand how to control Skaven. And you might go, well, that's... well, no, that just makes sense, because they understand how Skaven work, because they breed them, use them, mess them around with them. They designed the entire process to keep everyone that's coming to them absolutely petrified. The screaming, the horror, the lava, everything keeps the Skaven scared. Meaning that as the Skaven are coming in, even the most powerful warlord has his head ducked down. He's uncertain what this place is like. He is not in his happy place. Meaning that, no, they're not all killing each other. If anything, they're generally queuing, moving around, trying to get past each other. So it's not necessarily what you would expect for Skaven. Because Skaven aren't quite the creatures that many people portray them, because they often just go with the hilariously comical stabbing each other in the back every 2 seconds, which isn't actually how their society works.
That being said, a rather comical amount of them do die during this part of the process due to being, like, trampled or starving to death. And Clan Moulder also purposely antagonizes them, where they have bred these horrible species of, like, hornets and wasps that use the corpses of the dead as nests and then fly around stinging people, making the Skaven very agitated and very desperate. It's a horrible place. It's horrible.
Yeah. I particularly like. I remember when I first read that the place is horrible. You have to survive horror to reach them, to purchase from them, to get their favor. You have to survive not just the hellish landscape. You have to survive not just all of the horror that they've laid around you, which is a psychological terror. There is the physical difficulty of all of these bloated, horrific insects that are buzzing around, causing issues for everyone, stinging them, harassing them. Effectively, what they're doing is crowd management.
Mm-hmm.
Clan Moulder have crowd management, and they have spent a lot of time going, how can we ensure that the Skaven give us, the other Skaven clans, give us the most that we can possibly get? We have to ensure that they don't kill each other as they come here and then run off with all the stuff before they even arrive at us, which means we have to control all of this process. So they basically siphon them all together and control them through a mixture of various creatures, smells, sounds, fears, horrors, temperatures, weather, everything else, so that Clan Moulder has the advantage. It is a masterfully crafted experience. It is a Halloween horror show that is designed for one thing only: capitalism.
Yeah, so like imagine if when you had to go buy a house, you had to go through like a genuinely horrific torture experience before you got to negotiate with the person that tried, and you're just like, I just want to get out of here. Just give me the house. But let's say you make it across the river. You manage to convince the Guardian to let you through. You pay him whatever you're going to pay him, and he ferries you and your lads across. You're still not at the first level yet. You're almost there, but now you have to go through the slave pens, where all the new stock, all of the fresh meat, whether it be human, dwarf, goblin, elf, whatever, is being kept in cages. And this operates as another intimidation factor because... just seeing the sheer amount of people that have been captured and brought in is staggering. But Skaven also, rather amusingly, a lot of people don't realize this about them, but they, when it comes to fear especially, Skaven are surprisingly empathetic in the sense that they can imagine themselves in your spot, and it terrifies the absolute hell out of them. Even if it's something that you normally think they wouldn't, like, oh, they look down on humans or goblins and stuff, but when they know they're in unfamiliar territory, they know that could be them. And that is very intended by Clan Moulder. They have to walk through all these wailing souls to get to where the actual deals will start to be negotiated.
Yeah, we are 100% in psychological territory. So we have our great gates. We have the river of lava that flows through the gates. We have our protector who is there that doesn't let any of the Skaven into Hellpit without his say-so. We have Hellpit's own minions going in and out of that gate all the time, collecting monsters, collecting slaves, collecting the unfortunates who couldn't protect themselves on their way to Hellpit, because some of them will not be powerful enough to do so. Then we get you eventually moving by this great river of lava. Your bribe has got you in, and then you are surrounded by the enormous might, not of what Clan Moulder offers, but of what Clan Moulder uses. This is resources. This is coming in and showing just how rich they are, just how much they've got. And they might be in an isolated location sitting at the very north of the old world. But that isolated location is more than central enough that they are pulling in enormous creatures, monsters, elves, dwarves, skaven, ogres, you name it, they have got it there. Slaves of all species are there, and they keep them on display on purpose. It's not just the storeroom is here, ha ha ha, you have to go through the storeroom because it's the easiest place to get in. It's practical, of course it is. This is where we store our stuff before it goes down into the pit itself. It is practical, but it's also psychologically important, because everyone that passes through there goes, holy shit, they're rich. How much am I going to have to pay? Holy shit, they're rich. Well, they've got so much stuff. This is why I've come here. It's also something that makes you validated, because the Skaven come in going, yep, I'm in the right place. I came to the source. I've not got one of those shitty rat ogre batches that you can purchase down in Skaven Blight. I'm going to the source. I'm going to get something special. I'm going to get Brone Lipper the Fourth. I'm going to get something so awesome that I am going to win in my next great campaign expansion, my attempt to gain a secure seat on the Council of 13, whatever it may be. And they feel like they've made the correct choice. They've been through the first level of hell, even though this isn't the first level yet. They've gone through that, they've got in, and they have made the right decision, and Clan Moulder are supreme. It's all a psychological experiment.
Yeah,
everything
one thing
here makes sense.
I also really, really like is that the rat Charon, the farrier of soul, so to speak, the fact that he has warpstone eyes is also a really neat note, in my opinion, because it also gives the idea that he can scan for assassins. He can scan for people that are trying to get in that may have like magical artifacts or something weird about them. Getting past him because of the nature of what he is as an entity is actually genuinely quite difficult, which makes for a really nice level of security that could have its own fun storytelling elements of like trying to sneak like a shape-shifting demon past him if you're like a chaos type force or someone using magic as a disguise. It probably will not work on this guy, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I agree completely. Plus, this area here is full of the might of Clan Moulder. So we've got lots of examples of their more martial side. And I'm not talking about their great rat ogres, their big monsters. We're talking about their storm vermin. We're talking about their very capable, well-trained Skaven soldiers, because they're the ones who generally take the various prisoners that they have down into the pits of hell to be used by the others. So we're getting constant troops of these moving from one place to the next, again showing the might of Clan Moulder to any who are passing through. We don't just get there are monsters down there and the horror and the screams that are coming from down below in the pits. We get to see that Clan Moulder is much more than that alone. Clan Moulder is a fully martial, capable clan with its own fighting warriors. It's a great setup, and I love it. I just love it.
One last speed bump you have to get through before you're taken to the first level, and this one to me is fascinating because it subverts expectation in a brilliant way that I think is a master move by Clan Moulder, which is that during significant parts of the year, the individual that you will see managing this ring, checking out all the new stock, who you have to get past, is Lord Verminkin himself, one of the 12 Lords of Decay. Like, you would expect that, oh, he's down in the center of the fortress at the 9th level. No, he's standing at the entryway, greeting you as you come in. And Lords of Decay are fucking terrifying. They're terrifying creatures. They're borderline immortal horrors. And Verminkin especially has got like 2 heads that are completely sentient, whether he's a combination of 2 beings or just grew another head, who knows. But the idea, it's so different from, I think, what you would see in almost any other Skaven settlement, where the great leader of the clan is so obviously on display, almost in a very casual sense, is such a show of confidence while also scaring the living bejesus out of anyone that gets anywhere near him. It's fascinating, genuinely fascinating to me.
Yeah, agreed. He's not the quiet, distant figure that you often get with your Lords of Decay. No, I'm loving it. Plus, is this where we also have our rat queens? I seem to recall that.
No, yeah, we're almost there. We're almost there.
That's the one we go down.
That's first level.
That's first level. Good. Yeah, I couldn't remember. Thanks.
Yeah, which, speaking of which, it's time for. So
let's catch our couple of super chats before we go on, because there's going to be a couple there. Then we'll descend into the first level of Hellpit.
Yep. Without Virgil by our side. Let's see. Amadeus, what is the hierarchy in Clan Moulder between Warlords, Greyseers, and our chunky boy, the Master Mutator? So the Master Mutators in the actual lore, you wouldn't really often see them on battlefields because there are supposedly only 9 of them. There's 1 for each level of Hellpit, and they're like the rulers of the rings, but they don't really venture out that far into the rings. They're kind of more of like, they're generally in charge, but they're usually focused on their own shit. So Master Mutators are really, really high up there. Like, they're going to be above pretty much any of the warlords because they're the money makers. They're the geniuses. They are the mad super scientists that are running how things are going. And then your warlords would probably be below that. Greyseers, obviously there are no Greyseers in the clan because Greyseers are their own unique clan. Greyseers visit, and Clan Mulder is on fairly good terms with the Greyseer clan. There is a note about Greyseers are treated as kind of honored guests, and they're allowed to go down to, I think, the 5th or 6th ring, which is much lower. It's the 5th ring, which is way lower than most anybody else gets to go. And it's considered like an honored thing, which we'll talk about when we get to the 5th ring. But Master Mutators are like just below Verminkin himself.
Yeah, so I think that the first mistake here is trying to make a pyramid. It isn't. It just isn't. This is small c chaos, and also there is only one ruler here. That's Verminkin. Verminkin, who you might spot as you're passing through the gates, because he loves checking up over all of his various things, the new stock that has arrived. He is an interested figure. Verminkin is there. And now underneath him, we have the warlords of Clan Moulders. These are the generals. They go out and fight. They lead the warriors. The Master Mutators are not that. They're not generals. They're completely different things. They're mad sorcerer scientists. And they're down leading each one of these circles of hell. They are in a completely different hierarchy. They're in a different pyramid. They're a different part of the society. And that's the mistake, trying to say that one sits above the other. They don't. They're different things. But they do answer to Verminkin. Because Verminkin rules. Verminkin says that you are the one that's now ruling this part. You are the successful sorcerer scientist who can move down to this layer of hell.
Yeah, it's more
you
like a
schizophrenic warlord.
It's like more like a schizophrenic maze that goes up to a single point.
I mean, yeah, I agree, but at the same point, so is the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, say for example, I'll give you an example. What is the proper hierarchy between a US general and the leader of Facebook? I mean, they don't match. They're completely different things. And that's what you're asking there. You're asking for everything to slot together because they're the same species. They just don't. Greyseers are from a different company. If you want to view it in a company way, if you want to be a capitalist, and they come in and they will be treated as an outsider who might be allowed down to certain bits, depending on how powerful they are, where they sit, and who exactly they are. They might get treated better or worse, and the same for the other clans, the same for representatives of different clans. It's just a different group. Clan Moulder are a unique, discrete entity with multiple hierarchies, working multiple trees, and each one of those doesn't really compare to the next. The warlord is not more or less important to Verminkin according to the situation at hand, but the Master Mutators are enormously important. Surely they're above them. No, not when it comes to war. When they're out there going to war, the warlord is much more important to Verminkin than some Master Mutator who might provide something useful for that war and might even be capable in the front line. But why would you risk it? So I'd say they don't necessarily match together quite as well. And I think just look at real world structures will give you a nice example, because Skaven have a proper, full society. It's not just they have a nice little triangle of Verminkin at the top and them all going down. It's a complicated tree of social networks.
Tyrant, I got Ogre Tyrants, Doom Bulls, Swords, Old Bloods, High Tier Slayers.
Too big. Swords I'll go with.
Grail Knights, high tier Grail Knights. Vampire Lords for generic non-giants that can hang out with Chaos Lords. It's a reasonable list.
Tyrant, to go with your one, given that we weren't going with anything big, I didn't even include, say, things like Bulls and Tyrants and Swords Old Bloods, I'd argue, are about that size. Grail Knights, good shout. Vampire Lords were already discussed. But I'll generally say Grail Knights are probably the only one from all of this one that is that's potentially a certainty, because they have their own equivalent of mutation, which is their blessings from the lady. But broadly, still not. There's nothing equivalent really with the elves. There's nothing really the equivalent with the dwarves. And you might go, but Slayers! No, look at a Slayer's stats. Look what it can do. Slayers are for just killing big things. And Chaos Lords,
you'd probably want more
different arena.
You'd want like the beefiest of Dwarf Lord, but I wouldn't say a generic Dwarf Lord is gonna do very well. Morning Crescent. I love the idea that Molder's subject clans specialize. One with wolf rats and other radagars specialized research arms on established strains as opposed to making new breeds. There are some that do that. And like, it's going to be complex. There are going to be some groups within Hellpit that are more obsessed with trying to perfect a particular species, while others might be more obsessed with creating new ones. Like they all have their different focuses and specialities.
Yeah, I agree.
Super Orlog Vermikin, of course I stay on the surface. Do you know how dangerous Hellpit is? That's funny. 10,000 ants. Do Skaven have laws / rules for Skaven police? Yes, functionally.
Yeah. The Skaven have an enormous number of laws, the top tier of which were given to them directly by the Horned Rat, who, after the Great Civil Wars of the Skaven, basically came back and went, "Oi! Stop!"
Yeah, there's like 169 commandments.
Stop. Yeah, this is the immutable law you may not transgress, and the Horned Rat provided them with rules. And then each of the clans have got their own version. There is the Clan Moldar laws and rules. Do they have police? Yeah, that's just their warlord clans. That's their fighter types, who the top tier people inside the clan use to keep law and order. We often don't use the words law and order for species or factions like Skaven, but we're incorrect. They absolutely have it. They're a fully functioning society. So the answer to this is 100% yes.
Yeah. All right. We're all cut up. To the first level.
First layer of Hellpit.
Yeah. So we arrive on the first layer, which you could call the breeding circle if you wanted to be so inclined. And this one is an absolute nightmare, but don't worry, they all are. So when you come down into this level, you arrive where all of basically Clan Molder's Skaven come from, which is that it is said to be this titanic, massive level that is just full of, it's like straw and blood and awful and all this other horrible shit. And upon it are thousands upon thousands of massive bloated rat mothers who are endlessly giving birth and feeding young. And it is an absolute cacophony. Now, there are kind of vague pens, and there are constantly different kinds of Skaven running around, moving young from place to place to make sure they don't eat each other, and all of this other horrible madness. And this is one of the circles. Not all the circles have this, but for this circle, we actually know a little bit about the Master Molder in charge. He's quite interesting. So the Master Molder in charge of the Breed Circle, the first circle of Hellpit, is we don't know his name, but he is a master mutator who has grafted himself onto the body of a Doom Bull. So you have this big, horrible, hulking Doom Bull with a Master Molder Skaven sticking out of his back, like the Storm Fiends that we got in the end times. And he basically is hunched over talking to the Doom Bull, telling it what to do. Because funny enough, he doesn't have it to the point where he can like just think and it does what he thinks. He talks to it. But it seems to follow his commands without issue. But there is just a fucking Doom Bull stalking around with this horrible Skaven tumor coming out of its back, just talking to it constantly. And it is said to be such a like genuinely awful one in that in many ways the suffering of the first level eclipses all of the others because it's the place where life is created without any regard for sanity or anything else. It is a mess.
And I'm going to go a bit further because the breeding pit is not just the breeding pit of the Skaven. This is the breeding pit of all of their slaves.
Everything. Yeah.
And this is where the Skaven make all of their various cross species. And it's horrific. Use your imagination, because I have no desire to impose upon you the horrors that take place down there. But rat wolves come about for a reason. And they have species of all different kinds, and they use warpstone, pure magic. They use various distillations of the warpstone to allow unmentionable horrors to be birthed, where normally it would be impossible. They use untrammeled Gyron, the green wind of magic, to enforce fertility into things that should be impossible to be fertile under these situations. So many of the births that happen down here, most of them end in death. They are constantly experimenting. And if you are brought down here as a slave, you are almost certain to be bred. And they try everything. It is horrific. And it is just there as it's nightly. I remember when I first read it, it's their bread and butter. This is just their norm. This is their daily experience. They are used to this as the Skaven. The breeders here are here to breed, and they have found ways of breeding anything to almost anything. Now, it won't necessarily always be successful. Their job, though, is they're trying to create mixes that are stable, that they can then say, I have 12 of these mixes, and when I breed these mixes together, they are now creating a stable version of this creature, which means that we can then breed and breed on top of this until we've no longer just got 5, 6, 7, or 8. We've got hundreds of these that are these bizarre hybrids that we have managed to get together. And some of the hybrids are proper bonkers. Some of them will never, ever leave Hellpit because they are great studs or they are particularly fertile fields. And they are just used for breeding. Other stable species that they create will be never again seen outside of Hellpit because they're not useful outside of Hellpit. They might make cleaners. The place is awful. It's also worth noting that not only is it awful because the breeding pits are disgusting, it's awful because the breeding pits are actually disgusting. It's not just that, you know, there's straw and blood and all that. It's just crawling with insects of all kinds. There's the equivalent of Warhammer giant cockroaches, fleas and bugs and awfulness. This place is truly awful. If you want to think of a place that is a representation of what hell might be like on the physical realm, this is a good place to start. And this is also something that it's fair to say is controlled. It might be very easy to assume that everything would just die here because of the disease, the insects. No, it's all part of a process. Because they are the master mutators. They understand life in a way that no one else does. All of the creatures, the insects, the bugs, the horror, the flying things are all there for a reason and a purpose. They've all been bred. Everything here is by design. The things that they actually would kill or damage their various subjects are broadly kept in check. Broadly, not individually, broadly. Disease is rampant, obviously, but they are successful at what they do. And yes, sure, they also don't care. As in, if a few subjects die, then so be it. But when it comes to an important subject that is stable, they will be doing everything in their power to seclude it, ensure that it is very carefully looked after. It's a horror show here.
What's really interesting is looking at it from like a role player kind of microcosm element. Whenever y'all come into these streams and you're like, oh, is there such thing as like half elves or half dwarves and all those things, and they go, no, this is one of the places where the answer would be yes.
Yes. And indeed, I'm going to go further, and I'm going to say that there is a host of half elves, half creatures all over Warhammer fiction, and you do not need to go further than Hellpit to justify their existence, because one thing gets out and has a child with something else because it is naturally fertile, and we have our half species, and that can also turn into potentially an entire group. For example, when the old world was first advertised, they made mention of half orcs. As if half orcs were going to be a thing in the old world game when it came out, because it was a part of the old background and they brought it back again. And everyone was like, you can't do that, that's not modern Warhammer. And the answer is, no, you're wrong, it is modern Warhammer. It absolutely is. We can easily justify weird things in Warhammer by saying they're escapees from Hellpit, because Hellpit's old. It's a 4,000-year-old settlement. It's been there since around about 1,500 IC. It's been going for 4,000 years of successful breeding experiments. So, yeah, we're good.
Yeah, so Needles Haystack says, Skaven should breed humans or other races as spiceless infiltrators, not just bombs, innovations, such weapons. They do. They absolutely do. In fact, I won't say why or who it is, but go watch Lawhammer. I'll leave it at that.
And I don't just agree with this, Needle and Haystack. I strongly agree. The problem is, though, that their various things that they've bred have a relatively short time to try and adjust to wherever they're sent to be a spy. Because, truth be told, they come from a horror show. They do not make good humans. They make very bad humans, which means that they need some form of, I don't know, human school.
Human school.
Match in. Now, I'm not saying that I have an episode of Lawhammer called Human School, but I do, because it's an essential component of these spies, these slaves that they've created, trying to fit into the societies that they're trying to infiltrate, because they don't come from those societies, which means that they can't just turn up and say, look, I'm a perfect human, because they don't know what a human should do. They just arrived there without the correct language, without the correct skills, without the correct understanding of how society works. It's broken.
Almost like they would need to cooperate with a clan that is good at knowing how society works and spying on people.
Clan Scrutin, for example.
Yeah. Cody Smith asks, yeah, can someone confirm what female Skaven are like? So this is a question I actually want to tackle because it's actually kind of interesting of that. So there is a blunt answer, but then there's also a more interesting answer, which is that the more interesting answer, which I want to start with because it's a little more complicated, is we don't actually know what a regular female Skaven at birth is like. We don't know. We know what rat mothers are, but rat mothers are very explicitly, which are the only female Skaven we actively know about, are very explicitly these creatures that are pumped full of lots of growth hormones and all sorts of horrible gribblies to make them into these huge bloated monstrosities that just give birth at an absolutely alarming rate. They're huge, like they're way bigger than regular Skaven. But I would very much venture to say that that is not the natural state of female Skaven. It is something that has been enhanced. The idea that there could be plenty of female Skaven out there and they're completely indistinguishable from regular Skaven due to how like emaciated and horrible Skaven are in general is very easy. And very simple. Rat mothers just being a type of female Skaven.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. There's two views on this, and Games Workshop hasn't really given us consistent lines so that we can definitely lay it down. One is that all Skaven females are effectively a slave race, and they are kept down in the burrows to give birth to more Skaven.
Yeah, which could be the case.
Which could be the case. And they just churn out child after child after child. Then there's another view that some of them can be rat mothers pumped full of whatever horror this Skaven pumped them full with. Or alternatively, rat queens, if we move over to clan molders, who are basically, imagine a rat mother, let's dial it up further. Rat queens are giving birth to even more. And that Skaven females of various types just exist in their society. And they are having small litters themselves, but not like the rat mothers. They're not the big, almost the machine of capitalism churned out. They are the battery-fed cows in many respects, just churning out like a factory new Skaven. And the normal Skaven females are just in amongst society like the rest of them. The answer is we don't have an actual answer. The few examples we have of rat mothers are always given somewhat of a sensationalized description. The same is the case for the rat queens. So the answer, I would say, is for your game, whatever you prefer, and you probably will never end up contradicting anything because it's a bit of an icky subject, and Games Workshop's unlikely to dive into it with any great depth, although they almost certainly will, with various novels and stories, dive into meeting the rat mothers and the rat queens. But when it comes to normal female Skaven, it's unlikely they'll confirm it. But they might. I mean, we might end up with a Skaven book and roleplay that says they're only this or they're only that. And even then, I wouldn't necessarily agree that that would be all of Skaven, because Skavendom is huge.
Yep. All right. So moving on from the breeding circle, and then once we get past the next one, we'll get caught up on super chats and stuff.
Sounds
we
good.
have the feasting circle, the circle of, you could almost say, gluttony. So
I mean, would you?
Yeah, would you? Perhaps. Of Hellpit. So here you have the Great Feast Hall, which is the main focus of the ring, is that it is a titanic, massive ring full of just flesh to eat. Because Skaven are pretty unpicky in the things they can devour, which is annoying for the people that are trying to deal with them as a race, because they can literally just eat raw flesh and that's fine for them. So the Great Feast Halls are very much where, of course, they feed the massive titanic population that Hellpit has, as well as they hold victory feasts and various types of grand, huge ceremonies or meetings or celebrations. When they celebrate certain kinds of holidays, because you may think that Skaven don't have holidays, but sometimes they do, though it might not fall on a regular calendar. It might have more to do with like the alignment of Morslib, for instance, or other bizarre happenings. But when these various things take place, this is the ring where it happens. And it is a ring that is all about glutting oneself in order to stave off, of course, the infamous black hunger of the Skaven, which is a horrible, horrible ailment that all Skaven suffer from. But if you... The thing that's interesting about this ring in particular is that this ring of all of them is explicitly exposed to the sky. So the brain
all
ring,
of them are to a degree. Just to make sure we understand what Hellpit is. It's a great crevasse. Okay, so imagine a great gorge-like area into it, settled into the side of the mountains. And outside it's all dead and steaming and horrible. And then we go through the great gate that sits over the entire crevasse, and down through this crevasse is a river of lava that falls into an enormous pit. And this pit is like an enormous hole surrounded by mountains, and each level goes down step by step into it and then spreads out into the mountains to either side. So all of the levels are open to a degree to the outside weather, and the weather out here, as it's noted in more than one place, is a constant churning mess of warpstone laced rain, storm and terror, and then it spreads out into the mountains themselves and all the laboratories and internal workings of what Clan Moulder has to offer. So basically it's a giant mind pit. Because it's a literal pit. Yeah,
this level, what's notable is that the great feasting halls themselves are on the very exposed parts, because they're constantly being hit by this warpstone rain, which the master of this ring uses to his advantage, because this is where Throt the Unclean lives. And his laboratories are, which are open air, funny enough. At least a good portion of them.
Good portions of them are, yeah.
The thing that it's talked about is that for a lot of the Skaven, as we mentioned earlier, being out in the open and being hit with warpstone rain is not a great experience. That is very harsh, even for Skaven. So you almost have this interesting idea that Clan Moulder sort of almost is toughening up or testing many of their own by exposing them to the elements in a really awful, awful way. Because warpstone rain, it will affect you, even Skaven, if you're in it for too long. It will cause you to mutate. It talks about how there's endless flesh mutating down here that Throt and his various associates are devouring. There's kind of a funny quote about that. Throt and his companions, much to the amazement of the rest in Hellpit, create as much as they devour. Because they are gluttonous to an extreme degree.
Yeah, if you want to take a step back and move away from the hyperbole of language, because in the end, that's often what Warhammer writers do. What Warhammer Fantasy roleplay writers, which are a slightly different group, do, is they try to say, but how would this work? The second layer is the clan halls, really. This is where everyone gathers. This is where Clan Moulder live. This is where they celebrate. This is where they concoct their next plans. This is where they hold their great feast to the Horned Rat. This is where they live, breed, and exist, beyond the simple breeding pens that sit above. This is where the Skaven live, and the exposed sections at the edge of the pit are where the most horrific events occur, both in terms of the greatest celebrations and also the most mutation and awfulness. This is where many of the mutators will gather, because it's closest to the freezing conditions that you have this far north, this close to Kislev, and it's also closest to where the rain lashes down and the storms whip, making their experiments that are left out there in the freezing cold often more likely to mutate and create potentially something new, something different that they can use in their next experiment. So imagine this floor as where Clan Moulder live and do everything, because it broadly is.
Yeah, and of course, this is where good old Throt is, and a couple of interesting things about him is Throt's a rather curious individual, even among the Master Mutators of Hellpit. He's a busybody. That he has obviously mutated himself, which all of them have, But Thrott's mutations have kind of led to him having hyperactivity because he's a very twitchy, constantly has to eat because his metabolism is so ridiculous. He's always thinking, always eating, always working. He creates a lot of weird shit. Like the Throttlings are, of course, very infamous. Throttlings, there's not really a simple description I could give you of what they are because they are basically like hodgepodge weird shit that he just sort of slaps together when he's kind of bored and he's not really focused on any particular thing. He just starts grabbing people and bits of things and just sort of fusing them together, and then they just languish around his laboratories, being kind of a threat to people that try and get close. But every once in a while, he's like, "Oh, I've got too many. Send them out, dump them out in front of a Skaven horde as like cannon fodder. Just let them go die somewhere because they're getting in the way." Or he eats them. Or other such horrors. But he's got some really cool stuff in his laboratory. The most crazy of which is that there is a device Thrott has. And when I describe it to you, you're going to go, that's the most insane shit I've ever heard in my life. I thought this was a fantasy setting. And I would say, yeah. So Thrott the Unclean made a machine. And this machine of his allows him, there's different variants of it. The lesser versions he used to create things like Flayerkin, which are Chaos Marauders that were given to him by various Chaos Lords that he augmented to make them into horrible, horrible little things. He then made a slightly better machine where he created Gorich. We'll talk about more when we get down to a ring that he's more relevant for. Which Gorich is a 12-foot tall mechanical uber rat ogre with the brain of a fairly competent berserker exalted hero of chaos. There is a rather amusing note that Thrott regrets making him very much because Verminkin wants a lot more Goriches, and Gorich was very hard to make. And Thrott does not like Gorich. But Thrott since then has perfected the method. And what Thrott has designed is he made a machine that allows him to replace somebody's mind with the mind of another, which is really fucking spooky. I'm not talking about like carving your head open and removing your brain. I'm talking about he puts you in a machine and your mind, it's his, and he can put it in something else.
I would never use that in a roleplay game.
Yeah, never. Go watch Warhammer. But that's the kind of like batshit stuff these guys are getting up to, of just pure sci-fi insanity. But anyway, it's time to move on to the next level after we do super chats.
Yeah, what have we got next?
We got.
I'm just going to say one more time. I love Hellpit. This place is
very
great.
fun. And they're going to go on. If y'all were each tasked with inventing a couple new molder monsters, what would y'all come up with? I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you could almost like make a roulette board and spin it, and every time you land on an option, you just take a feature from the thing you landed on. I would. One of the things that I would love to play around with is that in the 6th edition Skaven book, the notes about Thrott were that he was like he had just finished a partnership with Clan Pestilence, and he had gone all the way to Lustria, and he was like obsessed with trying to make a big Lustrian thing. So I'd probably have fun with that. Like take some of my favorite Lustrian dinosaurs and make some kind of horrible like Carnosaur.
Ratsaur.
Yeah, a Ratasaur or something. I'd probably do a rat. I'd probably do a rat dinosaur.
Ratasaurus, he saw us. Yeah, I'd quite like that. Yeah, I quite like that. That's quite good.
You have anything to mind, Andy? Location.
They are right beside the Chaos Waste, and that's good. One of the nice notes about Clan Moulder is that they are constantly sending out packmasters to hunt down and find chaos creatures, big, huge things, that they can hopefully use and breed into something stable. And one of the details about it that I really liked was that, unlike most Skaven, Clan Moulder have a level of patience that surprises, in that they will track certain creatures for months, waiting for the moment they can take it, realizing that most of them are often much more powerful than they are. So that being the case, why not do one of the really big powerful ones, you know, just for something a little bit different, and go with our own equivalent of an enormous, really truly big dragon. A big rat dragon. Something
This
really,
red dragon would be spooky.
Awful. It would be bad. So yeah, something like that would be a bit fun.
Jack Ruby, stream about taxonomy and speculation.
Herculean task.
Death. Yeah, that would be a Herculean task.
Yeah, agreed, Jack.
Ricky Chapman, bring us our scalps, calipers, and sewing thread. We will make better horror praetor head on a murworm body with a hide from trolls sewn together to make second skin. Carnosaur legs that a dark elf sorcerer to be its brain. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing that does indeed happen. Clan Molder is the master of this. But I think it's also worth saying, though, that Clan Molder are not an island. They require much that they don't necessarily fully understand themselves to do this. And the details that you add there, I think, are worth just very briefly examining it with. And that's that the very best sorcerer scientists are not Clan Molder. They're Clan Scryer, by some significant measure with their Warplock engineers. Those engineers and the things that they're creating are going to be something that Clan Molder are going to be constantly trading for too. So many of the machines that they have down there are not necessarily machines that they themselves crafted from scratch. They will often be built upon something that they've bought from elsewhere, or they'll be using bits that they have pulled in from other clans. So yes to all of that, but I think it's worth just dropping an extra detail that there is probably a significant amount of trade, not just going out of Hellpit, but coming in.
Yeah, one of the things that the End Times did well, in my opinion, was that Clan Scryer and Clan Molder making a very strong formal deal where they really put their effort in and produced the horrors of the Storm Fiends. Felt like a very natural evolution of that kind of relationship. Where it felt like that was kind of inevitable.
Yeah, particularly because some Clan Scryer are pretty much, they're extraordinarily powerful. Extraordinarily so, but they're often kind of forgotten because they're just so, almost just Skaven, as many see them. And they just forget how important this clan is. We often delve into Clan Pestilence, but Clan Scryer are to this day still holding Skaven Blight.
Yeah, they are the big bads. To put it very bluntly. Necromancer Cobalt, I think, in my opinion, I think it would be a funny irony if non-breeder female Skaven are actually treated with respect, though they may be too much like the Premier. So what I would say to this is, so Skaven, I'll give you a little scenario in my head. Skaven really like showcases of power. They love it. To me, the idea of a Grayseer or a Warlord that deliberately had a honor guard, like his personal honor guard of non-breeder female Skaven, would be such an over-the-top, obnoxious display of power that it would be obscene. Like, that would be one of the scariest motherfuckers in Skavendom because of all of the implications of what he has as his personal guard of, like, this all-female regiment. That would be, like elite storm vermin with their own modifications. I think there are ways you could do this and not even have to stretch it that far, of like select individuals that somehow avoided the fate of the breeder rat and become something else. If they did avoid that and they are somewhere in Skavendom, there's a reason, and it's probably going to make them very, very scary.
Yeah, I don't like straying too far from the established background for my own stuff. I kind of can't help myself. Sometimes I go crazy, but normally I stay within the confines, for all it might look like I stray far beyond it, particularly things like Lawhammer. And broadly speaking, all of the Skaven that we know, all of the characters, all the ones that we see as the forward-facing Skaven are male. And they have very little respect for anything that isn't power and their own cunning schemes that are better than anyone else's schemes. Oh my goodness, my scheme is so clever and your scheme is stupid. So the only females that we're aware of are broadly the breeders. But I do think that the background, much like the Bretonnian background in the old world, where they've gone, you know what we said before? Yeah, we're just rewriting it. I think the Skaven background could not do necessarily with a rewrite, but could do with an update. And this is something that is not me saying that, oh, that's because I want to have female Skaven everywhere. No, it's quite the opposite, actually. It's because I want it all to make sense. And as it currently stands, it doesn't make as much sense as it could.
Yeah. And then last, before we go on to the next level, Darius Rose. Any monsters that escaped Hellpit and harvestable populations in the wild becoming a part of ecosystems? Yes, wolf rats did, and it was bad. It was real bad.
And then indeed, giant rats themselves. Then, as far as we can tell, the native rat population of the Warhammer world is not so different to the rat population of the real world. However, the Warhammer world is filled with things like giant rats. Enormous, really big ones, and the big bloated ones are almost certainly an outcome of the Skaven. Now, not necessarily Clan Moulder, because right at the very beginning, giant rats became a thing, but the development of the first Clan Moulder experiments have leaked out in a variety of places. Many of the things that we consider to be Warhammer species very possibly come from Clan Moulder experiments.
Yeah, there's a whole part of, if you go read the Children of the Horned Rat, which was the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Second Edition supplement, which is awesome. It's good super duper good.
In the McGregor and Steve Darlington wrote that one. It's a really nice one.
Yeah, in the bestiary section, there are notes for a number of the creatures that they were created in Hellpit, and then they just kind of escaped, and now they're just out in the wilds propagating, and it's kind of bad. Like, even for the Skaven, it's bad. Yeah. Which is quite funny, because, like, it's, of course, they're Skaven. They're like, oh, we can't let this escape into the environment, disrupt the environment. That is not a priority for Skaven.
The Clan Moulder are basically Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What we could, not what we should.
And it almost certainly frequently gets out of control.
All right, so we are past the quote-unquote circle of gluttony, and we're on to the fourth circle, which you could kind of think of as the circle of greed. And the fourth circle of Hellpit is the treasury, is where all the goodies are kept, where there is said to be uncountable mountains of gold, warpstone, precious metals, and all sorts of other things that they value. And like Andy said earlier, this is by far, in my opinion, the most comedic of the circles, because the only thing really going on here is that there's a bunch of scribes, these withered, pissed off, angry rats that count their own personal piles. And because they're Skaven, instead of, I don't know, just taking a tally with notes, they are said to stack things as they count them. So the way they keep track is by how big the stacks are. But of course, because they're Skaven and they're angry and pissed all the time, they have pet wolf rats that they send to knock down the piles of the other scribes to fuck up their counts, because they don't want, like, the other scribes getting, like, being told they're doing a good job. So Moulder has no idea how much money they actually have, because the scribes are constantly screwing up each other's counts. And it's sort of an endless hell for them personally. But as far as, like, the crazy horrors of Hellpit, it is by far the most mundane of the circles. It's just a personal hell for the guys that work there, which I find very funny.
Yeah, this circle is one that, if we were expanding it out for, say, a roleplay supplement, is the one that would almost certainly be expanded most, because we'd be dealing with, effectively, the banks, the storage of not just information, but also, not just, money, but power. This is the source of Clan Moulder's power, its great wealth, and also its warpstone. This is where the magical might of the clan is also stored, which is dangerous as fuck. So there's all manner of cool extras that we would be adding to this to make sense of it. What do you find as we settle into this pit and go down? What is the Skaven equivalent of Gringotts if you want to go down the Harry Potter route? What do we have down here? What Skaven warlords have got their personal fortunes stacked here, and how do they keep them safe? And the answer is broadly, not just our Skaven accountants, but we're also certainly going to be having guards, we're going to be having overseers, we're going to be having warriors, we're going to have all manner of different folk.
Oh yeah, this would be a busy place.
Eyeing each other with a certain amount of distrust. This is a super cool level, but also, and at its base level and its base description, a bit goofy. And that goofiness is super cool, and I wouldn't like to see that removed if anyone's coming in and rewriting it or adding to it later. But I would really like to see it expanded outwards so that we understand how their society works. How do they access their wealth? How do the individual Skaven get what is theirs from this? What is the red tape and the bureaucracy? Because it's clearly the level of bureaucracy, the level of control that Verminkin right at the very top has over all of not just his people, all of his clan, but the individual subclans, factions, groups, warlords, the people he needs to pay. How is it all handled? And the answer to that is this level. This is how it is all worked. And this level is arguably Verminkin's power. This is why Clan Moulder rules in a fashion that is far stronger than you would expect, given its relatively small numbers. And it's because of everything they have here. This is what effectively ensures Verminkin's place on the Council of 13, which also means this is story hook central. This is where all of the other, if you're playing a Skaven game, for example, this is one of the primary targets, because this is where you can get stuff. And stuff is important. So yeah, I love this level. Just wish there was a bit more to it.
You can imagine that there would be a lot of interesting stories here, because this would be one of the most political levels. This would be the level where there'd be attempted assassinations, where there'd be attempted thieveries, where, like, imagine how Clan Moulder protects things. Like, imagine there being particular creatures that they've bred that mark money with a scent, and those creatures are able to identify based on the scent of the money who it belongs to. But then someone trying to make a counterfeit version of that, which could be very fascinating, but also very funny in its own right. And just shenanigans. So many shenanigans. But also, if you're not supposed to be there, horrible layers upon defenses and awful.
Yeah, agree completely. I really, really like this entire area for its potential, not because of what it is described as, because this ultimately explains, and this whole level explains how Clan Moulder have reached the level of power that they have, and also how they control that power, because the warpstone that they have, the methods of its use in the various laboratories and everything else, all funnels through this layer. Everything passes through this. Everything they're doing comes through here, and the outsiders, the other clans, want this stuff. So it's also one of the layers with the most story potential.
Next up, we have the 5th level, which is the grandest and most, shall we say, theatrical of all of the levels of Hellpit, which is the Great Gladiatorial Arena. This level is very unique in that it's not actually the standard, like, it's a ring built into the mountain, but instead from the ring, there's all these great chains that hold up a grand suspended arena over the abyss of the other rings. And there's a great and the actual ring itself is more like the stadium that surrounds the arena, where all of Clan Moulder comes not only for entertainment, but also basically to show off and to test. So they throw in all of their various creatures into this arena, which fight it out, and the winners get packaged up and ready to go, while the losers are either sent to people like clans they don't care as much about, and they're like, they can have the loser stock, or they are augmented further, or if they're just killed or whatever. But this is the lowest ring that guests are allowed to, where, like, the Greyseers, if they're on good terms with Clan Moulder, will be invited down as guests of honor to watch the gladiator fights. But this is where all sorts of this is where the real meat happens of all the different flesh crafters, the master molders, and the pack masters are able to show their stuff. This is where Throth the Unclean made a lot of his great fame by unleashing the first Hellpit abomination to devastating effect. And this arena is truly massive. It is a big fucking just chunk of almost just where all sorts of just different nightmares take place on a daily basis. And if you were maybe captured by Hellpit, you might be fighting for your life to prove that you are a useful asset to test the new creatures. Yes.
Yeah, you can. This is the big spectacle. This is the layer that makes for, potentially story-wise, some of the bigger, ridiculous, over-the-top combat wombat stories. But in terms of trying to imagine it, we have various different routes towards it, because with the concept of arena comes the concept of audience. And when we're dealing with Clan anything on the Skaven, we are dealing with enormous numbers. The numbers are very rarely just a few thousand. There are potentially scores to hundreds of thousands of rats who will be gathered in great audiences watching the conflicts down below. From what we can tell, we have ourselves obviously our pit, which is getting increasingly smaller down to the bottom, where it goes to a point and just falls into the warrens. And down quite low, we have this great arena suspended in the center of the pit near the bottom. You can see down to this arena from all the higher points if you happen to be on the edge. It's there. Now, where does the audience gather? Does it gather in great rows on the pit itself to either side? Is it also inside the pit itself? I imagine it's a mixture of both. I imagine that the audience gathers inside this great chained contraption, particularly people who of importance. Verminkin probably has his own special box down there, standing like Caesar over some great amphitheater. And then you've got all of the various guests who might be there. Then the rising stone cliffs to either side, which will have all manner of boxes that go into the great warrens that lie beneath. This also suggests that because there's so much fighting, so many big creatures, we're going to have methods in and out of here from the other levels, exactly how they gain access. So this is going to be one of the most warren-like of and most connected to the other layers, because they're all going to have different creatures they want to get into this place. And we know that those that are particularly successful, the Skaven, because it's not just abominations et al that go here. Skaven storm vermin train and fight down here as well. The ones that do really well are sometimes taken back to the barracks and promoted and moved in. It's a method of getting out of where you are. Slaves who do very well might be taken into the clan rat regiments because they've shown that they've got their own utility. They can get out of where they are. There's all manner of ways that this place can be used. And the more you look at this one, the more fun, cool details you can make, because it is the great amphitheater of the Skaven. And that's cool, particularly when you consider just how much Clan Moulder has invested into this, because this is not just a spectacle. This is not just, you know, bread and circuses where you're attempting to pacify the mob, which it does, because this is entertaining, man. Particularly for the Skaven. It's not just controlling the people, it's also their experimental pit. This is where they can prove themselves. This is where the master mutators can say, look at the new thing I have made. And it will dominate what you have. And when they lose, the shame that comes with that. It's a beautiful place to deal with what Clan Moulder have to offer. And I think that if you're building any stories out there or want to use a nice roleplay place, this is a great roleplay place. It's a really good location for it, because we're going to have rivalries, we're going to have peaks and troughs, crowds screaming, chittering hordes, potentially rain lashing down, warpstone rain indeed, upon those who can't afford decent seats, those who can't sit somewhere there where they can be protected, okay, as they're sitting out in the cold, freezing, as it's snowing down on warpstone rain lashes, because there's so much warpstone in the Hellpit that it goes up and it comes right back down as rain and worse. So they're sitting there freezing away, some of them boiling up with potential mutations, others huggling away, where down closer where it's all protected, there's a Grey Seer visitor perhaps sitting there watching on, seeing what Clan Moulder can offer as they pull out. And they're all basically doing that. I don't know if you've ever watched any of those Facebook or Google tech shows, and it all goes wrong. Always hilarious. Always hilarious. And they say, here's our new tech, this is how it works. And they try it out, and it doesn't. Imagine doing that before a Grey Seer who's visiting. And imagine how frickin' annoyed Verminkin's going to be if you make his clan look weak. So all of those cool stories happen here. This is where the knife edge of what is success and failure is decided. And when it goes wrong, This is where entire battles can end up forming as someone fails, and then I didn't fail, it was you, my rival has brought me down. You poisoned my creature, I did not, no! And they suddenly break out into conflict because their reputation is on the line. And when your reputation is on the line, you're likely to die in Skaven society if you fail, unless you can somehow turn success out of this. So they're now, hackles rise, squirting the musk of fear, getting ready to fight for their lives. And conflict occurs. And it's not just conflict because it's the arena. It's conflict because they failed, or their experiments fail in the arena. It's a great place. So of all the locations in all of our various pits, this is the one that I suggest if you are playing a game out there, try to figure out how to use it.
Just your standard peer review process.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and we have one more circle before we'll get caught up with Super Chat stuff, because it ties directly into the 5th circle, which is that then you have the circle of punishment, which is the one directly below the 5th. Because here's a fun fact about that arena. It has no guardrails. It is very common for creatures that lose in the fight to get shoved off by their opponents or thrown off by some great beast, or for people to get pushed off by the milling crowds because, say, you know, there's no OSHA in Skaven society. So what happens if you fall? Well, you land in the 6th circle, which is described as a great overhang over the circles that remain below that. And it is a field of flesh, to the point where it's described as rich, fertile fields, which almost seems to kind of imply that there's like crops and other kinds of things growing here, which is horrible to imagine, growing out of the meat ground. But the various creatures and stuff that fall down here are just left to suffer. This is a ring explicitly of suffering, because if you fail, this is where you get sent. If you're a chieftain or a warlord and you fucked up and the higher ups are pissed at you, they will chain like a I goofed up sign to your body, and they send you to wander this circle until you die. If you are a captured tribesman from the northern chaos tribes that got captured by Hellpit and they decide they want to humiliate you, instead of using you for simple experiments, this is where you get sent. And it's basically just a desolate, once again, fertile place of just rotting meat, where there are things growing and living here where you are left to die. But that's the good case scenario. There is a bad case scenario, which is that you run into a selection of individuals. There are the most unhinged of the master mutators and just regular molder specialists also live here. There's one who's called out in classic Warhammer fashion, Izak Grottle. And Izak Grottle is basically Dark Eldar. He likes to catch people and turn them into living furniture. That is his thing. That's what he does. So if you run into him, he will catch you and you're going to be a couch for the rest of eternity. Funny enough, he's literally just kind of dropped and mentioned. So if anyone's ever like, haha, Dark Eldar living furniture, you can go, I know a Skaven that does that. And you may go, oh, well, surely he's like the worst thing down there. No. There's a guardian that protects the circle to prevent people from going back up, because you cannot escape your punishment. It's unnamed, but we do know that it petrifies people. So it's likely some kind of horrible cockatrice or one of the basilisk variants, or maybe something custom built, who can say. But there is some horrible guardian that petrifies, and then we have the actual guy in charge. This is another one where we know the Master Molder, and we have Grisket, the Lord of the Sludge, which is quite a title. But he is very, very freaky and interesting, because there's a note about him, which is that Grisket is followed around by a trio of pets. And his trio are 3 entities that have the heads of rats, the bodies of human women, and bat wings. Which, what?
Yeah, totally.
Gross, is what I'll say.
So, this level is more than it might first appear. So what we have here is, we've got our big, huge, if we can imagine our pit again as an inverted triangle. And above this pit, we've got the arena. which is all chained into place, and there's areas to watch this arena attached to that. There's tunnels into the side of it, and large parts of the arena fall down into the overhang that lies below and then spreads down into the pit. But this is also arguably one of the most important levels. Why? Because this is their farm. This is where they get their food. There's often a question that is raised by people who look at Warhammer towns and cities, and that is, how the fuck do they feed everything? What do dwarves even eat? How do they do the thing? None of this makes sense. How can Altdorf, the capital of the Empire, have a population of hundreds of thousands when it's surrounded by forest and marsh? Where are the farmlands? And here we have Hellpit's farmland. A farm of flesh, and one presumes, if we were to detail this further, more than just flesh. There's all manner of growing weirdness going on down here, whether it's on the fungal side or perhaps the more black wheat side that we get coming out of Skavenblight, because they are the ultimate masters of genetically modified food. They are the GMO creatures. They are the capitalists of this all, and this is where they get their food from. You might topple down and fail from the arena, but you will be used by this particular stronghold because you're going to be eaten by something at some point. And this great corpse field that is both fuel for whatever they're growing, the corpse parts, and also the mulch that becomes the new material for what goes above, is how they manage to feed the uncounted chittering hordes that live here. This is basically their superstore. This is their Walmart. This is their, I don't know, Sainsbury's if you're over in the UK. This is their big shopping centre. This is where, you know, you go down with your basket and you pick out your food and you go back up again. Which means this is also a level that probably has, again, far more warrens connecting up above than you might first expect. Because it's obviously not the only place you're going to get food. There's going to be all manner of available flesh on all of the levels. But this is where the vast stores, the repositories of physical materia that is regurgitated and reused by the Skaven to give them energy can be found.
Yep. And
it's kind of horrible.
And hilariously, so yeah, you get sent to Walmart as punishment, which is, you know,
yeah. Which is fair. I think, all right. If I was writing up Hellpit, I would definitely use that as a core behind the scene.
That actually makes for metaphor. A equally hilarious and horrifying punishment. Is, hey, you have to go collect the harvest, and being like, oh. Fuck.
It's horrible. You know, say you are the one that has to go down and collect the clan, so your particular clan, family group, whatever, or the barracks that you work with, if it happens to be clan rats, whatever it might be, you're the one that has to go down and collect the mulch. Even the Skaven find it horrendous. And indeed, the equivalent of what we have down there, a Skaven cashier going, well, that's going to take so many warp tokens. You can only feed your barracks if you provide us with this. And that'll be working through the level where all the wealth is stored. This is a giant bureaucracy. This is literal hell. This is a capitalist nightmare that also is a mutating, chaos-ridden disaster zone. I love it.
Yeah, all while you're avoiding any monsters that have fallen from the fifth ring, in addition to Chaos Tribesmen and Chaos Skaven chieftains that are down here as punishment. Like, it's a mess. But in a fun
it's
way.
A proper cool place.
All right, super chats, and then we're on to the last 3 rings.
Excellent, the lower levels.
Have the Pack Masters of Hellpit ever tried to trade barter steel with the Beast Masters of Karankar? Imagine a rat, Hydra, Medusa abomination. It's a long way to the ocean.
It's a long
way. And then once you arrive at the Frozen Sea, it's a really long way to Nagaroth, and then you have to get to Karankar, which is also a really long way from the ocean.
Colbo, I understand the desire to conflate two things that have similar tones and themes. The slave pits and being used, and a whole host of abomination things. But they are unlikely to cross. Now, does that mean that there's never been a Medusa equivalent that's been taken by Hellpit at some point? I mean, possibly, yeah. Possibly they've never had one. I mean, it's possible. But equally, it's possible they have. But I don't think trade is At all likely. Barter, at all likely. Steal, possibly. But they are so very, very separate and also relatively isolated in how they operate. Clan Moulder may sell across the Skaven Empire, but the core of what they do happens in Hellpit, which means that they're very localized in what they do.
What I will say,
I will counteract slightly in that we often forget that you can go across the top of the world to collect Dark Elf stuff from the north,
still a journey,
and then go back. It's a journey and a half through hell, but the Clan Moulder Skaven, in fact, are used to moving through the Chaos Wastes. This is what they do. So, yes, I think they possibly have taken quite a lot of elves from there, and the vast majority of their elf stock is probably Dark Elves. Almost always, almost uniquely, because they're unlikely to get much in the way of Azure or Azrai or Eony or any of the other elven types out there. So it's mostly going to be Druchii. But I don't think they're going to have a great deal, and I don't think trade is high on their list in the same way that,
What I would say is it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if there was a Thrall clan to Clan Moulder somewhere in Nagaroth that did have a relationship.
I'm thinking that right now. It's exactly what I was thinking.
So there might be like a forward man that allows it. Now, I don't think the cities themselves would have any notable contact, but trade through various intermediaries. Yeah, I think that's probably reasonably likely.
That's actually quite likely. Yeah, the Dark Elves are enormously arrogant. They are unlikely to trade in such an easy fashion, particularly with Ratmen. But I do think that some sort of, let's call it a fortress, a Skaven fortress that's over on that side, trading directly through to Hellpit, almost certainly. It's probably where they get most of their elf slaves.
Yeah, and I could see that there is the occasional enterprising Dark Elf Beastmaster who has things that they want from the Skaven that can prove useful,
Skaven
and vice versa.
Anything. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say that through various extensions, yes.
I can happily argue myself round to a completely different position there. I like that. Yep.
Hollow, thank you very much. Speaking of Gorich, his voice in Total War was surprisingly eloquent for a Cornate rat. Makes me think a React/tier list stream of Total War. Oh, that could be a fun one. Doing a tier list of the Total War Warhammer voices for all the characters. It would be a lot of Andy whining. It's true.
100%.
Yeah, but that could be a fun one at some point. That could be a fun one to do.
Nice one.
Darius, Bone Ripper versus My Chewini. Yeah, very much. Yeah, a lot of that. Jonathan Scott, scenario, you've both been contracted to make a PG-rated version of Hellpit called Heckpit. Give us your pitches to our blessed corporate overlords. Well, I would first probably tell them to fuck off, but I don't like when people try to make Warhammer PG. I know the GW likes to do that sometimes. And I think with Skaven, it falls apart very quickly once you get past like Clan Rats, Skaven Assassins, and Greyseers.
We all have our own red lines that we don't like to cross because we feel it either weakens the intellectual property, the stories, or alternatively, it's potentially dangerous. Now, you might go, dangerous? In Warhammer fiction? Yes, dangerous. And I'll explain why I would suggest that. If you take, for example, let's go to a different setting, Warhammer 40k, and you take a fascist state, which is the freaking worst, then you scrub off all of the barcodes and you say, actually, this fascist state is full of good guys. They're all good guys. And we're going to dial it all back a little bit, keep all the fascist messaging, and now just say, hey, this is for kids. It's purely for kids. And it's only for kids. And look, kids and children live here, and we've got kids' versions of them all. That is an error. Because you are now saying the fascist state and promoting a fascist message and saying that absolute control and authority over all the people with zero freedoms is a good thing, but also saying, and we can all live happily in there because we've made it all nice. That is a red line. Why, for example, I wouldn't do things like that. This, for me, is somewhat similar. Skaven, not good.
Counter proposal. You make Hellpit would be a 1-for-1 copy of Disneyland. But with Skaven.
I would be very happy with, for example, making a really cool gladiatorial game called, Hellpit or something like that. But you get the gladiatorial pits, and what you play is one of the equivalent of a Skaven mutator, or perhaps you're a warlord or whatever you are. You're one of the Skaven, and you're putting your stuff in the middle, attempting to win, gain glory, gain warpstone, gain whatever you're doing, and it's basically almost a Necromunda style game in a pit. You can make a really cool game out of that. That would be great. But would I like to make a PG version of it all? Probably not, because the Skaven are awful and they should be awful. Nothing wrong with making them funny and awful, but nevertheless awful.
Has Clan Moulder made an actual combat wombat? Yes. Yes, they absolutely have. From the great land of Lumbria. Yep. Laughing God. Fell behind the stream, don't know if this has been asked. How does the fantasy version of Hellpit compare to what Moulder has in Age of Sigmar? So,
interesting question.
So the best way to answer this is that the Skaven in Age of Sigmar rely on two methods, which is that I'm going to get this really, really brief because I want to get back to the last 3 levels in the interest of time. Of that, the Skaven have their own realm. So Skaven Blight was pulled into the realm of ruin and sort of spread out across it. And then the Skaven did some hilarious fuckery that caused it to sink within, like... The realm of chaos is weird and mindfucky, but the Skaven fucked up so bad that they basically sunk through a 4-dimensional space to the absolute bottom basement door of hell, which is very funny. And Clan Moulder controls a notable section of it that is very Hellpit inspired. But they also have great cities out amongst the realms that have all sorts of different forms depending on which realm it's in. So you could imagine things kind of like Hellpit, but with very significant additional flavors. I wouldn't say there's anything that's a 1-to-1 copy of Hellpit, but that's a good thing. There shouldn't be.
Yeah, I agree. One of the mistakes of any creative process is to copy paste a thing of that ilk, because it weakens the thing in both settings. If you copy paste Hellpit over, then Hellpit's less interesting in both Warhammer and Age of Sigmar. You make each one different, unique, and interesting for their own reasons, and then you get something that's better.
Yeah. So, on to the 7th level.
Oh, here we go. We're going down. We're about to hit the bottom soon.
So, the 7th level is the last deep breath you get to take before the plunge, because this is the barracks. So, this is the Great Warrens, where most of Clan Moulder actively lives. And where all of the armies are kept, and it is a great big clusterfuck of a mess, though it's a lot better than it used to be, because it has a boss in charge. And no, it's not the Master Mutator that's in charge of this level, but it is Gorich, the Castellan of Hellpit, who was created by Thought the Unclean. And one day I'm sure we'll do a Thought the Unclean episode where we'll talk about him and Gorich fairly equally. And Gorich was made by Throt as an invention. Then when he was a Cornate Berserker guy that failed Archaon, and Archaon basically gave him to Hellpit because Archaon was smart and tried to initiate trade with Hellpit and actively avoid them instead of attacking them, because he learned from Asvar Kul's mistake, which is don't attack Hellpit. Just like you shouldn't attack Russia while you're also fighting the rest of Europe at the same time. Gorich had his mind transferred into the body of a pseudo-undead machine horror rat ogre with extra arms and flamethrowers and shit. And he, when he awoke and discovered the horror of his form, he escaped and fought his way down the arena. Big fight. He killed a lot of stuff, and the Skaven were like, oh, very cool, very nice, very impressed. And he's considered Throt's greatest invention, much to Throt's annoyance, because he was the first time Throt perfected the method of putting a mind into another body without breaking it. Where Gorich is fully aware, he's fully sentient, he has all his memories, and he is all there. And Gorich's cornate sensibilities did fairly well amongst the Skaven, because he is very good at killing anyone that doesn't do what they're told. And for the Skaven, the Master Mutators in particular, they went, oh, very nice. And eventually he rose through the ranks and he got put in charge. He's the Castellan, so he's in many ways the defender of Hellpit. And because, well, what's interesting about this level is that this level has the most tunnels that go out of Hellpit to the rest of the world. Because obviously the army has to get out without having...
make a slight amendment. This isn't where the armies are. This is where their worst monsters are. It says quite clearly the worst monsters are kept in great barracks down there.
The fiercest creatures and warlords of the clan. The worst monsters are a little... The worst monsters are a little further down.
That they have. Yeah, this is the absolute worst that they have. This is basically their big defense strategy. Unlike, for example, the other hordes where they rely upon the other Skaven cities where they rely upon, basically speaking, their clan rats and storm vermin. They have a different plan, and it all spans back to 200 years ago in the Great War Against Chaos when they unleashed all the rat ogres and all the rest.
It's interesting the warlords are kept down here.
Yeah, totally. Well. This is where the special bestest Skaven live, and this is where the biggest, nastiest, stable horrors that Clan Moulder have live. And this is the ones that has the most connecting out tunnels. So if you want to attack Clan Moulder, you have two options. Option number one is go down into the tunnels and you face the worst that Clan Moulder has to offer. And it's horrific. And this is largely what Azavar Kul made a mistake with, because he did that. Or you go in through the front and you have all of the normal Skaven and then all the monsters that can come out afterwards as well. So we've got ourselves an entire layer of the worst monsters that Clan Moulder can make. And unlike, for example, the great laboratories and everything else, where they've got all manner of potentially horrific creatures, these are mostly the stable ones. These are the ones that are controlled.
Yeah, the success stories.
These are the successes. These are the horrors. And one of the biggest horrors of them all, leads them all, is the Castellan of Hellpit. He is the one who will be, who announces when the great gates are opened and all these monsters are set free. Because they're not just successes because they can be controlled. Many of them can't be. Their successes because they are god-awful monstrosities that when they're unleashed will kill everything in their path, potentially including Skaven. So these are things that are unleashed into the tunnels whenever they're attacked. It is a horrific level filled with such... I mean, you can only say the word monster so many times before it begins to lose meaning. But such monsters that to see them is sanity blasting, because we already know there's sanity blasting creatures out there. Take a Jabberslide, for example. If you don't know what that is, go check it up. To see one of those, you go a bit mad. But then take a Jabberslide, add a rat, an extra rat troll, a rat ogre on top of it, give it the legs of a wolf rat, and have it bounding around doing all manner of horrific things down there. And possibly it can squeeze through gaps that are only this wide, because it's also got the genetics of a bog octopus. There's all manner of horrific things down here. Some of them will never be bred again because they can't breed. They're sterile. Some of them are just one-offs. Some of them are entire breeds of species that they can only hold in cages and never actually let out above ground because they can't be controlled. But they are 100% a success because when you let them go, they kill everything in their path.
Yeah,
and that
also
is
just
what this layer is about.
Counted amounts of rat ogres. Just so many rat ogres.
So many rat ogres down here. This is the big nasty level.
Yeah. And for those who, of course, love the guy, this is, of course, the section that Grimgar Ironhide basically stumbled towards, where he fought his way from Red Eye Mountain pretty much to the doorway of Hellpit, just killing everything. And the Skaven threw so much garbage at him that he finally kind of eventually got bored and left. And the Skaven were like, what the hell was that guy? And
yeah, they drove him back. And I think that's worth noting. It'd be very easy to just go, oh, you know, he's unstoppable. He's not. Hellpit.
Yeah, he eventually hit a wall.
Yeah. He hit a wall of monsters. He couldn't fight past them. They were beyond him, and he was driven back. Not just, you know, he gave up. He was pushed out, and sealed out. They got rid of him. And that is, I think, again, a testament to Hellpit. Hellpit is as close to unassailable as you can get. And I think that, to a degree, that's potentially the story they should have run with when they eventually moved into the end times, because there's an obvious flaw in Hellpit. This Hellpit itself.
Yeah, and which, funny enough, the Gotrek and Felix series did a good job of kind of exploiting, better than the end times did. One of the things that's extra funny for those that care is that Grimgor, in many ways, which he doesn't care, is actually, I would argue, an asset to Clan Moulder, because every winter lately he goes back to Red Eye Mountain because of all the horrible blizzards and stuff, and he goes back down and he starts fighting his way towards Hellpit again, and they basically kind of use him as almost a testing method.
What is this thing? Red Eye Mountain, really quite far away from
it's a distance, but really suspiciously, there are always fresh Skaven monsters for Grimgor to fight when he goes down every winter. And I don't think that's an accident. I genuinely think that Grimgor is a planned for testing method, a season of, Grimgor season's about to start. Who's going to make the creature that can maybe kill him? Who's going to make the creature that can survive him? Which is really interesting and adds like another layer of interest to what's going on down in Hellpit.
I agree. And I think this is, I think it speaks to the nature of the Skaven of Clan Moulder. Everything is a testing zone to them, including what others would see as an unassailable invasion. They don't see it as an unassailable invasion. They see it as, that's something we can test our big things on. Are they successful? Are they not? And they will be trying to entice entities like Grimgor towards them so that they can throw out what they have and check whether it works. For that time when Grimgor moves from, for example, just doing, skirmishes, fights, attacks, and fight for a fight's sake to a true Wa. And can they hold the Wa back? And by that point, they have fully tested entities that can hold back greenskins in a bunch of ways that most people wouldn't expect.
Also, when you're dealing with Clan Moulder, who would actually have one of the best understandings of other species, second probably only to Clan Clan Eshin. If they're smart, they should know that if you have a greenskin horde nearby, you want to every once in a while do cullings, try and kill a lot of them, because if you let them build up too much, that's going to be a problem. It's like letting steam build in a boiler. You got to let steam off.
Yeah, agree completely. And if you don't cull those greenskins, they will come out as they swarm down and a Wa forms.
Yeah, that's what happened the first time.
The inevitable greenskin tide will eventually sweep over you all. So, I think of any of the various species of the Warhammer world that understands it, the Skaven of Clan Moulder are the ones who understand it. They understand greenskins, they understand goblins, they understand orcs, they understand noblars, they understand pretty much all of the various hobgoblin-y greenskin races, species that pop up, and they use them. And it's not just a matter of they use them to strengthen their own creations, they also use them in their creations. So super cool.
Yep. Then say goodbye to all the laughs and the funs and the giggles. Ooh. Because now we go down to the circle of filth, which is the 8th circle. And it notes that this is where Hellpit narrows very rapidly. This circle is a funnel. So it goes from being kind of wide to really fast. And this is the circle where all of the garbage, the filth, the sewage, the leavings, the corpses, everything that they don't want in all the other levels gets dumped down here. Everything that's just thrown over the side of the higher rings, eventually the rain sloshing down all of the horrible awfulness winds up down here. And this place fucking sucks. It sucks. It is absolutely just full of massive amounts of trash and garbage and the worst things you can imagine. And there are things down here that don't have accurate descriptions. There are living undulants of warpstone, weird, like bloated creatures that are almost more mutation of warpstone than they are anything else, that are just looking around for things to add to themselves in horrible ways. And nothing that Clan Moulder wants to deal with is here. Nothing. There are hordes of rats that are just eating anyone they can find because they're constantly starving, trying to avoid the trash. But there is a Master Moulder down here, as there is in all the levels. And down here, we have good old Searscrix, who's known as the Thorn-Limbed, without much explanation of what...
Skarscrix. Isn't it Skarscrix? I've got it somewhere. I think it's Skarscrix.
It is. Sorry, I thought it was an E. Yeah. That's a C. There was a graphic behind it that makes it look like an E. Scar scripts.
The layout in White Dwarves were terrible.
Yeah, they really like layering all the little art shit over, which is cool looking, but it makes it hard to read sometimes. So this is a realm that is always in perpetual darkness. It's the Twilight realm of awful. And Scarskrex is down here because he has a hobby, which is that he has serpents, which is really interesting because most Skaven are fucking terrified of snakes for very good reason.
Yeah.
And he is always looking for people or entities to hybridize with his unique serpent species. And that's what he does. That is his whole thing, is he wanders this giant realm of garbage and filth looking for people and bits to add to the serpent creatures he's making, which is fascinating because you wonder what he's up to with those, considering the race that is the most terrified of snakes is other Skaven.
Yeah, I find this level is a good level to have because it's often forgotten, and that is what happens to all of the life that's above, and the answer is it shits down. And what we have down here is the filth, but it's not entirely empty. We also have cages and prisons and cells, because this is where the worst, let's say, offenders are put. This is the punishment level.
Really piss off.
This isn't the punishment level. The punishment level, as we've already said, is up above where all the food is. This is way down. This is the trash can. This is the bottom. And down here we have ourselves another master mutator, because there's one on every level, and this one down here is presiding over the worst. You wouldn't call them criminals. They're not criminals. They're worst prisoners, and they are tested on just like everyone else is, but they are sent here because it is the worst place in Hellpit. It's very easy to think of the previous levels up above as bad, because they are, but this is the worst in terms of survivability, at least, because you can't go further down. There is more to come.
Yes.
And it's also the worst.
Yes. In a different way, but yes.
But at least this one's potentially survivable as they do whatever it is that they do to their worst captives. And it is awful down here. It's the level of stink in this benighted realm is impossible to describe. This is the bottom. This is the worst. This is the bottom of the hive, I suppose. The almost apex point. There's only a tiny little bit to go beneath this, and it is, it's going to get worse because there is more to come.
Yep. And we're going to get caught up on Super Chats real quick, and then we'll descend to the final level, which I think we actually only have one.
What else do we have to say?
Loving your streams as always. The crew is listening as we hang out in the wheelhouse. Well, awesome.
Oh, nice.
I'm glad y'all are enjoying the show. We all hope you're both well. We're doing okay.
We're doing okay. It's been I've had better weeks at this side. If you didn't watch the award show that I did the other day for World Anvil, I mentioned that one as well. World Anvil was a moment of absolute joy because everyone was just there to just celebrate and have fun. And I've had a pretty tough couple of weeks, so I'm happy to be here because we're talking about shit that I love to talk about. And as we're down at the bottom levels, we are literally talking about shit that I like to talk about because it's awful down here.
So that takes us to the ninth
final level. We had to get there eventually.
Yeah, where in Dante's Inferno you come across the frozen lake with Lucifer himself chomping down on Judas and some Pontius Pilate, I think, or just being an absolute dick. But down here it's worse. So this is where the absolute most terrifying, powerful, nightmarish creations of Clan Moulder end up. The creatures that have somehow survived all of the other levels and wound up down here. They've been through the worst humiliations, the worst augmentations. They have survived the gladiator arenas before eventually being brought down here or being cast out and then slowly wandering their way down. But it is awful, awful, awful. And this is where you find things like the Chimera rats, which are way too dangerous to be kept up in any of the higher levels. This is where the true monsters lurk, in like all capital, underlined, bolded italics, of the things that are so bad that Clan Moulder cannot risk having them around anything but other horrible wild monsters. And you may think, oh, well, the good news is it's the furthest down. So like it's the furthest away from everything else. And the horrifying part is that's where you're wrong. because there are two creatures that are left very vague, which I love. They're only described as cyclopean giants that are at the very center where Lucifer would stand. There's two of them, these giant, horrible cyclopean beasts that are at the center. We don't know what they are, but all that's said is that when Verminkin gives the order, or the master mutator that's in charge of this level, who's left unnamed, these great, horrible creatures herd together all of the monsters onto these great platforms, and they pick up the platforms and lift them up so that they can be unleashed upon the world, which is bad fucking news for anyone that's trying to assault Hellpit or any other situation. Like, you can imagine Azavar Kul's one of his great generals trying to deal with Hellpit, thinking that he's got the upper hand, only for these great hands to lift up with these just like Noah's Ark, but demented and terrible and awful, of the worst kinds of creatures, and they're just dumped out onto the invading army.
Yeah, this is the level where the worst shit is. The very worst. Now, we've already said, but what about all of those very successful barrack-filled monsters above? They're the successful ones that, importantly, they can control. Now, control doesn't mean they can control them, as in you go over there. It means that they can house them. They can funnel them in one direction or another. They can control them. These are too big, too powerful, too strong, too wily, too ephemeral, too ghostly, too different. They are the ones that have somehow toppled down from above and not died. Down here, in the benighted black realm that is at the bottom, there are some of the most powerful, horrendous creatures that the Warhammer world might have to offer. Some of them are too powerful for Clan Moulder to deal with. They have wrapped them in chains, held them in place down there, and they somehow don't die. This is where everything that has gone wrong from above is stored. When the Master Mutator up above creates something that is just too powerful, too impossible to actually do anything with, they will try and push it off the edge down here. Get rid of it fast. We have to get rid of it. Send it down below. We can't deal with this shit. Sometimes they will winch it down with giant chains as they realize they've created something too terrible to continue existing. The last bottom part of Hellpit is where the true abominations lie. Now, of course, we have the abominations of Hellpit. They are piddly little non-entities in comparison to what lies down here. The great benefit of the abominations is that they can be controlled. These can't.
Yeah, loosely, but yes.
Yeah, exactly, loosely, but they can be controlled. They can be included in an army, and they'll probably go in the right direction. That's control as far as Skaven is concerned. I mean, that's master control in comparison to the horrors down here. And this is, if you are looking for the, oh, I want to use this in a roleplay game, this is where you can create and play with anything from cyclopean, weird, chthonic entities from the beginning of time that Skaven mistakenly worked with, to potentially even gods and weirdness and awfulness that could potentially be down here. You could have them attempting to experiment with vampires. What have they left down there? There are things that are going to be immortal that are down here that cannot be killed, and the Skaven are terrified of. There's going to be all manner of true awfulness here, plus these weird cyclopean creatures that sit at the very bottom that somehow provide some sort of order that sits so far above it, not physically, but in terms of their giant nature, they somehow managed to survive down there. It is a weird, horrible black hole where the Skaven push all of the things they would like to forget, and if they get desperate, they will send down basically a fishing rod, chains, to collect something and to unleash it on their enemy and hide from whatever it is that they've unleashed. It's a great end to Hellpit, because it shows just how dangerous that the things that Hellpit are dealing with. And ultimately, come the end times, this is the bit that we really should have had a nice story about.
It should have been. There's this is where the burrowing behemoths are also kept, which are always digging down. These great, horrible mole-like monsters that are the size of dragons. Their stat lines are bonkers. Just digging endlessly. And I agree with Andy. That really should have been the undoing of Hellpit, is ignoring the stuff down here and them like these things coming up, and that being what fucks them over. But that, dear Virgil, ends our journey through hell.
Yeah.
But we got some super chats and stuff to catch up on.
Yeah. Yeah. Hellpit's
what a
good.
fun place.
I love Hellpit.
Haven, really, so what city of Hellpit do you live, Mr. Sotek man? No, I don't live in Houston. But that being said, I mean, apparently there are snakes on the 8th level, so I guess I'm contractually bound to go there, even though that is not great. Not great. Bernard, times are a bit rough, but take this token of my appreciation. Can one? Well, thank you very much. Can one become a demon prince without help from the gods? Okay, so there are some technicalities in that question. To become like a tabletop demon prince of one of the 4 powers, probably not. But to become an undivided demon prince, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of heavy lifting in the word help there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are multiple methods inside Warhammer where individuals have ascended. Let's use that language instead, which means they are no longer mortal and material, and they become etheric, as in a spirit. And some of those did it without any interaction of a god. Now, the word demon prince specifically typically refers to someone who is attached to one of the chaos gods or to chaos in general and has been somehow turned into a demon forever. And that generally means that they are focusing on one of the chaos powers or attempting to do this in ascending. But again, there are stories where no god has helped them. They have driven their own way in, like a spear point into the guts. And without any help at all, they have become their own thing. But many of the stories, particularly of the 4 great chaos powers, are all about that chaos god finding favor with an individual. They're like, I like this one. Touched. You've now got the mark of Khorne. You've now got the mark of Slaanesh, or whatever else it might be, which means ultimately, if you are a demon prince of any of those and you've gone through the standard process, got a mark, you always have the help of that chaos god in some fashion. So the answer to this is, it's complicated, as is often the case with these things. But broadly, if it's the 4 great chaos powers, broadly the answer is no. But there are multiple routes to ascension where you can become effectively an etheric entity without necessarily having the help of God.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cole Patterson, there's a great Total War Warhammer 2 mod that gives a special unit to molder for each layer of Hellpit, like cool. Twin Cyclops. Maybe you could take a quick look. Well, I will say that is super fucking cool. Let's see. I think I found it here. So what? It's the so you got Throttlings, Chimera Rats, Armored Rat Ogres, Aberrations, which are from the book.
The Hellpit army list.
Burrowing Behemoths, yep, also from that. Storm Fiends from the End Times, cool. Chimera Rats, Twin of I mean this is basically just all the creatures from that White Dwarf supplement. So
yeah, makes sense.
Good.
If you want to go check it out, White Dwarf 311 is a really good place to basically learn about Hellpit, but also about the army that Hellpit might field as a proper clan molder force, rather than a Skaven force that has some clan molder bits in it. It's a proper clan molder force, and I think it does a pretty damn good job as well of showing how Skaven forces are really, really mental sometimes, with all manner of different craziness in it.
Hammond, funny enough, I would not offer any of these as good examples of what Bernard was asking about, of becoming a demon prince without gods, because vermin lords are raised up by the Great Horned Rat. Sigmar, according to most myths, was crowned by Ulrich. Which kind of almost implies him as a demon prince of Ulrich. And Sotek was a god, but he's weird because he kind of existed before he came into existence, and then he also
don't they all?
Yeah, the gods are complicated. So I wouldn't say any of those are particularly great examples, unfortunately.
I mean, you can argue all of them.
You could argue it.
To be nice with Hammond, because I feel bad because you could argue them, but I'd say of those, Sotek is the cleanest. But Sotek's not an individual, really, that rises. Sotek's more the god, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
That it comes about because of what they're doing. Yeah, so all of those have flaws for being a good example of that, I think.
Yeah, they're close. I will say that.
Yeah, totally.
Rick Chapman, and for a third Molder monster for the stream, a Dread Saurian's body with the arms of a bone grinder giant for legs, but for a head, 13 dragon heads from Chaos Dragons, and a giant maw filled with scryer sorcery bound around banshees. What? I would be very interested to know how the hell they got 13 dragon heads on stash. That's impressive. That's very impressive. There are a lot of fun, crazy potential, which is why that White Dwarf article was so fun, because the article is basically just kit bashing the article for Clan Molder, which is great and super duper fun.
It is.
And Clan Molder is, when it comes to flesh crafting, they're probably the most famous version of it in Warhammer. Now, they're not the only ones that do it, but they are by far, I would say, the public champions would probably be a good way to put it.
Yeah, and that's bringing us all to time, so I suppose we best do a wrap-up of some sort.
Christ. We should, otherwise we're going to be going over
here already. Look at that.
I know,
so
this one's
I have a couple of things to end on, and that is that Clan Molder are somewhat rare in the Skaven, in that we have a location that pretty much epitomizes everything that they are. And they're also rare for the Skaven in that we've got a lot of detail about that location. All too often, all we get for any of the great cities or conglomerations, particularly for the Skaven, is 2 or 3 paragraphs sitting inside, for example, an army book, with maybe a few references in a timeline, and another couple of references for, this character comes from there, they're rock hard and they lead it, they are far better than everyone else, and they've got barracks full of soldiers, those soldiers attack things, that's what happens in this place, and that's about it. But not so for Hellpit. Hellpit, we have an enormous amount of detail about. We know its various layers. We know many of the characters who live there. We know how it actually functions as a city, which is rare in Warhammer, where altogether too often our cities are just, here, enormous number of people live, we don't care how they're fed, we don't care how they work, all we care about is how many halberdiers do they have, and how many can we put on the battlefield. Woo! As it turns out, with Hellpit, it's quite different. They've not just got all of the layers of Hell Pit, but all of those layers, when you take them combined, sort of makes sense. They make a place that actually works. We have an entire section which is dedicated to feeding this city. We have a section that's dedicated to life. We've got a section that's dedicated to the military. We've got a section that's dedicated to the sorcery, science, and breeding. All of it, when you take it as a whole, adds up to this great examination of Skaven society that goes far beyond almost anything else we've ever had from Warhammer. Skaven Blight hasn't had this much extra detail added to it. We're often left looking at Skaven Blight going, well, it's in the middle of a marsh. It's a big place, full of Skaven, most important place in the entire world, but we're lacking all of the cool things that would really provide it with detail. And here we've got, this is where I'm now going to pull back, not quite enough. Because all we really have is the cursory top details of each of these layers. It's like we've got these the top of a periscope that sits down, and we know that there's an entire submarine of cool detail that we could have from Hellpit, but it's not been done. We don't really know how they feed themselves, we just know that they do from this level. We don't really know how they live, we just know that they do from that level. We don't know how the great monsters are, or how many different types there are, how successful they've been, who are these sorcerer scientists. We just know they're there. And this is where normally the role-playing game steps in. And this is where I think is one of, arguably, at least as far as Warhammer is concerned, one of the most interesting places that they could detail.
Man, it'd be such a good, if Fourth Ed ever does like a playable Skaven supplement, this would be so good for this.
And there's a reason why Hellpit makes for a better location than many others. It's because it's open. This location, unlike all the other Skaven settlements that we have across the old world, is entirely open, it's approachable, it's known. Kislev knows about Hellpit. This isn't one of those, it doesn't exist, the Skaven can't be seen. Kislev knows. This isn't Skaven Blight, which hides in the marshes, is wrapped round with spells, all goo everywhere in an attempt to try and keep their great capital away. Clan Scryer, the Warlock Engineers, magic everywhere. It's not like that. This is public. Chaos knows about it. The Norse know about it. Kislev knows about it. It is a place that is also run by intelligent entities that realize that they have threats on the outside they have to deal with. This is something that, as a Warhammer Fantasy roleplay group, for example, you can encounter, deal with, and potentially even escape. And who doesn't want to have the escape from hell adventure? Because that is awesome. It's mythic. The idea of falling into hell and having to fight your way out, or perhaps cunningly trick your way out, or whatever else we may have. This is one of the locations of the Warhammer world that is gagging to be properly developed, because we not only would understand how Skaven work, we would also be able to see that Skaven function as a part of the Warhammer world in a way that often the battle books just don't care about. But for those of us who are playing deep inside the world, we absolutely do care about. How can Skaven exist if apparently no one knows they exist? And the answer is, they do exist, lots of people know they exist, and in a variety of different ways. And Hellpit is a shining example of how Skaven fit into the surrounding world. And I would love to see more. So that's my end.
Yep. The last thing I'll add, so to Cole Patterson, I did find the mod you were talking about actually, and yeah, these are great. I'm just gonna read them off real fast just for funsies. That's very funny. So you have so you get a regiment of renown for each of the circles of Hellpit. So you get Scaron instead of Charon, Guardian of the Gates, fun. Marcheek and Zolbor, Warden of the Second Circle, which is the Twisted Master Mutator fused to a Doombull. Cool. For the third circle, you get the Failed Prototypes, which is a Mutant Rat Ogre Regiment of Renown. Cool. For the fourth circle, you get Were-Rats. That's fun.
Where?
For the fifth circle, you get the Scarred, which are Hellpit Arena Champions. Very sitting. For 6, you get Grisket, the Lord of Sludge, as a big, nasty... and he flies on a bat creature. Haha, fun. For the 7th level, you get the Wailing, a Hellpit abomination that's always screaming. For the 8th circle, you get Scar Skrix, Overseer of the 8th circle, who possesses a lot of different cool abilities. And then for the 9th one, you get the Twin Cyclopean Giants. Yeah, that seems great.
Yeah, it does.
All right, let's go through the last of the super chats, and then it's time for us to go.
It is indeed. We're almost done.
Robert the Bruce is a Demon Prince of Wallace.
Sure.
Sure, why not?
Things go.
I was thinking of the theory of Hashit being one. Oh, that could work if you wanted it to. I mean, that is a route you could take. I mean, if I assume you've watched the Mingos Arnagran streamed. So that is definitely a route you could take.
Yeah,
Americans are the demon princes of the UK. It feels that way lately. I'm not gonna lie, it does feel that way right now.
Wow.
Todd Howard is from Hellpit. It just works. It just works.
Yeah. I also have one comment I'd like to bring up from Charlie the Turtle, who says, to be honest, that is also how the Skaven and Hellpit would view the place. How many monsters? Who knows? How much food? Who knows? How much money we make? Who knows? But it works. And you know what, Charlie the Turtle? You're right. But I have zero interest in knowing what a Skaven inside Hellpit knows about Hellpit, other than understanding the Skaven there. I want to understand Hellpit. I don't need to have the knowledge of a Skaven in Hellpit. I want to, because that would be super unfun for trying to understand Hellpit. I want to know Hellpit, so I would love to see much more. That would make me feel sad.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. But right, yes, thanks very much for the comment.
We're done.
We are. That was a good one. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, this one was super fun. Unlike the usual, there was like a nice, easy, obvious direction to take with it, which worked great as we just mined our way down to the bottom. I actually have no idea what we're doing next Sunday.
Nope, neither do I. I have zero idea at all, so we'll almost certainly be chatting about this after. Yeah. Do we know?
I think I know what I want to do, but we'll discuss it afterwards.
Yeah, we'll discuss it after. Sounds good.
But this Wednesday, we do know what we're doing. We are going to be talking about the afterlives of Warhammer Fantasy.
Oh, I forgot we were doing that. Brilliant. Warhammer Afterlives this Wednesday. Oh, I'm looking forward to that one a lot.
Yeah, so that one's going to be super interesting because there are some weirdly specific notes and then a whole lot of vague shit. So I hope you're all looking forward to that. And this Friday, Lawhammer, I assume.
Yeah, indeed. It's this Friday will be the first episode of Empire and Ruins, which is the last part of the Enemy Within campaign. Our version of it. We're picking up things approximately a couple of weeks after the last episode that we just had, which was, holy crap! It was things happened.
I think I caught the last hour and a half, and it was like, Jesus fucking Christ, the whole time, just. People are gonna need to start making like those boards where you have all the strings just tying around. God damn, I need that for the most recent episode.
I have just finished writing a 17,000 word blog.
Oh,
that's
thank God.
How big that is, to explain what happened, not that episode, but the episode before that. But this episode, for those of you who know your broader Warhammer lore, set up the Dark Shadows campaign.
That was peak. I'm not gonna lie, that was peak.
That was pretty good. I was happy with that.
That felt good, and it felt like it was planned from the beginning.
And it wasn't. It was brilliant.
But man, it felt so good. Anyway,
I was so happy that landed.
I if you haven't watched Lawhammer, I don't know what the fuck you're doing with your life.
It goes places.
Go watch it. But anywho, that's it for us. We will see you guys on Wednesday.
See you Wednesday. Other than that, until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.